Hey everybody, Kelly Justice here with the Philosophy Society. So it is July 10th, 2024. We are in the Toronto Metropolitan University Library and room 860. The air conditioning sucks in here, but it's okay. In the wintertime, hopefully it'll be nice and cozy, like a fireplace. And so there's people in the room, people online right now, and then people on YouTube in the future, which will be there present. And today we're going to continue with 7 Habits. Maybe we'll finish this chapter. There's 26 pages left in the chapter, so that's quite a bit, to be honest. Because I think it is important that people talk and we communicate about things, but at the same time, we want to progress through some content, just because that's kind of the purpose. Okay, so we're on the principle center. So this is slide, let's check here, 18 of 30-ish. So, yeah. Okay, so as I usually do, I'm going to read through the slide, and then we're going to go to the text and go through the text together. So the principles are not reactive, do not depend on others' behavior. So, okay, let's just do a real recap. So he talks about our center, right? And the center is the source of where our wisdom, security, guidance, and power come from. Okay. And those are the things we use to kind of do anything, any objective or goal. And it's almost metaphysical in some ways, in his view, but we're going to work with it regardless. And so he says that depending on your center, or you could say the thing that's is of most value to you, sometimes will not be representative of what the best decision is. And he says, if we value, when he says being principle valued, it almost just means being reasonable or being philosophical, because there's principles for like everything, right? And so he goes through a list of different principles. He's like, you could be focused on money, you could be focused on work, you could be focused on your family. And sometimes those will not yield the best results, right? And so what the best thing to do is have a principle for each of those things and determine which principle is best to apply for the current circumstances, and be willing and able to go through those principles, right? And so he goes through all these principles, all these different centers of a person's sense of self or identity. And now he's going to talk about what a principled center is, right? So what does it mean to instead of living by a specific value, living by like a higher ordered process orientation, which is a principled center, right? It's the way to look at different things and evaluate those things. All right, so that's where we are, right?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So because he's talking about obviously he promotes the principle center, right? He kind of say, I was kind of thinking about I think we talked about before what's that? The hierarchy.
Yeah.
The self-expression as the one, and then below you have belonging. You also have money. You also have like safety.
Sure.
Right. So how does that? I'm trying to kind of relate these two things, because it's all talk about human. Because hierarchy is that you have to satisfy the
basic needs,
the basic, and then go.
Sure.
And once you experience the top,
the self-actualization, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Then you can actually sacrifice, like a Mandela, like they starting to in a prison, they protest, that's why, because they already experienced the self, so they can willingly, but normally people will have to go through this. So how does this relate to this?
I think that's actually a criticism of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Okay.
That, like, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy, it would be contingent on the bottom properties for the top property, self-actualization, to be emergent.
Yeah.
And so if someone values, like you said, protesting, and they give up their basic needs, then wouldn't that mean that it takes away from the self-actualization?
There is explanation on Maslow's book. He said for people to do that, because they have to do that, they have to already experience the feeling of self-establishment, then they can willingly give up the lower ends.
Okay.
If they, because of protest, they're obviously on the top,
Sure.
So that's his explanation.
Well, it would just be that, like, so again, we're just thinking about principles here. right? So if the error would be like if you focus on eating only the best foods, right? And you're like pleasure oriented with food. Like let's say that you're like
Lobster.
a Gordon Ramsay kind of guy, but you just only it's just gluttony. Not Gordon Ramsay per se, but just someone who's in culinary arts and they just focus on that and only that. And then like
that was calling out.
culinary is like the industry of cooking or the art of cooking.
Oh, okay.
So it's like and so or being a chef, right?
Like a Michelin.
Michelin. Well, yeah, Michelin is like a rating system for restaurants.
Yeah.
And so you could focus on the basic bottom need or just being social. So the different centers, you could say that there's different centers in there, right? And then, but really the model of self-actualization or the hierarchy of needs is a humanistic model that's trying to say that if you meet these elements of the human condition, then humans have this transcendent experience. They go beyond themselves, right? And that's in the process of becoming a person, right? This is like in psychology, this is like humanism. It's like what it is, which is also existential in some ways.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And so like if we were going to apply this to Covey's work, you would just have to formulate a principle based on self-actualization. Right? It's the same thing for everything. It just all you do is you just figure out a principle, and then you can compare different principles, and you can say what is the most appropriate that would apply to this situation or circumstance. So in this chapter, he talks about like a husband buys tickets to go to a concert with his wife, right? And then he gets a call from work, and his boss is like, "You got to stay late." And so he's like, so what Covey does is he goes from each different center. If you were pleasure centered, you would approach the situation this way. If you were money centered, you would approach it this way, right? To just show different perspectives on the same context. And then he says, if you're principle centered, we're going to get to this maybe today, you would evaluate all of the factors involved in the situation and then make the best decision based on what the situation presents to you, right?
So fuck the boss.
Maybe, right? But maybe it's like, maybe not. It depends, right? We have to talk about it, right? It's not just a one size fits all necessarily. It's our application of principles and then ensuring that those principles are coherent and they're reasonably applied to the situation. And that's, again, Aristotle's practical wisdom kind of comes into this too, right? Learning how to apply being virtuous, but we're incorporating a principled approach towards it. Is that our understanding of what principles are and the application of those principles is a skill.
But also, you are talking about Mandela. I don't know exactly if he was a philosopher or a leader. It's like I say, Karl Marx, philosopher, you have Lenin, Stalin, the rest, as you can use execution. We saw in the French Revolution. But I think this is a theory. But how degree of freedom have the humans as an individual human? Because you have, this is theory, it's clear. I have my priorities, but I have the society, I have the family, I have the leaders, I have politicians. And if I want to do it, yes, you are in one society. And in this society, you are supposed to do this. You have to take this way and not the way you are you would like to take as an individual human.
So you're trying to talk about the freedom of the individual within the context of social norms,
Sure,
or expectations.
Mhm.
And then what else are you trying to communicate?
Our limitation.
The limitations of individual
Our
freedom within
limitation.
that. Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to the social contract again, like Rousseau, right? That we develop this agreement amongst the group of the people
Mhm.
that we're going to forbid freedoms that cause harm to each other, so that we have this luxury of safety, whether it's an illusion or not is a different thing. And then we all invest money in an enforcement of that agreement, which is like the police or the criminal justice system, to uphold this illusion of safety.
Or not if you are in China, what kind of freedom have the Chinese people?
No. 1984.
So it's theory that at the end, you have reality. This is something that's going to combine.
Yeah, the contract over there is a bit different, right? Than
Mhm.
there would be in this part of the world, right?
Mhm.
Let's leave it there, unless you want to continue. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Because
That's nice.
that's a thread that we can keep on bringing. We'll come back to it. When you see that applies again, let's bring it back so we can expand on it with the discussion, right? Because it's that's like we could talk about that for 3 hours, right? That's the thing, which is good though.
Mhm.
Okay, so the principles are not reactive, right? That goes back to the proactive habit. They don't depend on other people's behavior or the environment, and they don't die. They're not contingent on the individual that believes in the principles. The principles are deep fundamental truths with generic common denominators. So they're universal in some ways, right? And really you could say that they're a priori. It's based on deductive reasoning. I think that's what's missing from Covey from a philosophical standpoint. Well, why is it true? Right? Well, it's because it's deductive. It's like 1 + 1 = 2. I don't need to go and collect objects to know the truth of how those symbols are put together, right? And so being proactive, in contrast to being reactive,
Mhm.
as a principle, we can, just because of the nature of proactivity and reactivity and stimulus response, we can derive a truth from that as a principle in itself. And so anybody that is, the human condition in itself, right? Like if you're a different kind of being, maybe it won't apply, but for our kind of being, it applies universally, right? And if any other animal evolves or AI is developed to the point where it responds to its environment, then it would also apply to that too, right? Assuming that it doesn't violate the initial premise of the difference between being reactive and proactive.
I have another
Or stimulus response. Yeah.
question. You know, the postmodern, I don't know, Judith Butler or who talks about, because the feminist point of view, they focus more like a relational. They think, this is too, I'm just trying to make up their argument. This is very male thinking, principle, very logic. But even in family, you use principle, but from the feminine side, they take, the relational point of view, not so much, right or wrong, it's but caring. Are you? What's your?
Yeah, it's like the care ethic.
Care ethic.
Compromising.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think initially, like, if from a feminist philosophy, right? I think it's important to like clarify really what philosophically is going on. It's like in the context that as long as it's not just antagonistic towards anything that a man says. Because if you're just saying that you're a man, you said this, therefore it's wrong, that's clearly sexist in itself. And we want to evaluate the belief or the argument based on the structure of the argument itself, right? Is it valid? And are the premises true, right? Now you could say that even if that's the case, the way it's been derived or how you came to it is because you're a man. And again, that's still a little bit sexist. You know what I mean? Like it's still a little bit sexist. If someone's saying that men are better than women, and someone who's feminist says, "Hey, that's inappropriate," right? We have equal rights. I agree with that for sure, because because we're looking at the content now, right? Because a woman could say that, and you could still say she's wrong, or an AI could say it, or a dolphin could say it. It doesn't matter, right? Or God could say it. It doesn't matter. It's still
equal right means equal.
Yeah,
because now before, I can understand some kind of feminism or some movement to promote women to be at the same level. But now, especially in some countries in Europe, I know very well, you try to promote women over men. It's a phenomenon. It means you have 50-50, you have to have many rights, but this is not real rights. It's discrimination of men.
Yeah, it's like a pendulum effect where like it's an opposite response or a reactive response towards an initial thing that had some problems or was incorrect. and they take the extreme approach, or like the antithesis to an initial idea. And yeah, so so that's the first thing I like to say about just feminism as an approach. Excuse me. And but the care ethic and the relations, well, I think that the principle approach doesn't contradict that. It would say that the principles can uphold the having a care ethic or promote relations between people. And you can see that with his family-based mission statement or the organizational-based mission statement. That having a mission statement, that which is a fundamental part of this chapter, beginning with the end in mind, doesn't contradict relationships in any way, right? If anything, it helps people remove themselves from being reactive and being more proactive towards specific goals, to think about what they want, identify the role that they have, and then in this chapter, he talks about visualization, visualizing the kind of person you want to be towards that end. And so all of those things promote relationships. So in that feminist philosophy, you know, I would even prefer just to say the thinker specifically that thought about it, not necessarily call it feminism, because feminism has some negative connotations, and it's diametrically opposed from men. It just better just talk about people, you know, and not discriminate women for any reason. You know what I mean? That's real feminism, I think.
I was in one experience here in the army in Canada. I had some proofs for engineering in the army, and one of the girls asked the lead sergeant or one the degree had, "What about me? I am a woman. I am supposed to have the same rates level in a physical proofs." And the military said, "Of course, all of us, we are equal. So you, the men and the women and the age, you should have exactly the same, we can say, consider rank, scale, because all of us, we are equal." One example, but no, it's not the case in Europe. The case in Europe have much advantage and privileges if you are a woman or you are a man. It's totally opposite.
Yeah. That's the pendulum thing I was saying. Like, there's a difference between equality and equity. And like one of the examples that one of my professors gave, the equality is everyone is the same, or we're going to give everybody the same amount. Whereas equity is we're going to give some people more because they require more, which is based on the golden mean, and other people that don't need it, they don't have to have it. So for example, like universal generalized income, right, would be based on the fact that if you make less than, like, I don't know what the number is, but like, let's just say $50,000 a year or $70,000 a year, then you get this package of money. Whereas if you make more, then there's no real need, you don't have a need for it, so you don't get it, right? Or like one of the examples was there, like in the slide that my professor showed, there was a very tall person, a medium-sized person, and a short person, and they were trying to look over a fence to see a game. The tall person could see, but the medium one couldn't, and the small couldn't. So to say that they were equal, if you give them all the same size of box, the tall person would be even higher, which was unnecessary. The medium person could barely see, and the small person still couldn't see. But if you took, or the medium person could see, but the small person couldn't. But if you took the box that the tall person had and gave it to the shortest person, that person would be higher, and now they all can see the game. So it's not about equal contribution, it's about being equitable. And some things that make some people may need more, and that's just to make it balanced so everyone has like an equal ability to participate in certain areas. And this is one of the fundamental properties behind like diversity and inclusion, which I think is fine. It's just part of the issue is that it can contradict like criteria for merit. And Elon Musk makes this example too, that if you reduce the standards for which certain professions are allowed into the profession, like doctors or lawyers or astronauts or whatever, engineers, then the quality of the product can be reduced. It's better just to like not discriminate people, for example, like don't have names or where the person lives on the resume, so they can't be discriminated by the place where they live or by whatever their name would be, right? Because you can tell someone's ethnicity by their name, for example. And so that's one way to like be blind from a human resource perspective to who's applying, and then people would have more of an equitable advantage to get hired for jobs.
Use your example, the tall person, whatever. I guess the John Rawls in the Theory of Justice,
Yes.
he talk about the principle of difference.
Okay.
Justice is fairness. So basically,
Yes.
we are equal in terms of some fundamental rights like freedom, free speech, like voting, but if you are born short, whatever, the tall or the millionaire, they have a response. The only reason that we allow the millionaire the people get richer is because the fact that get richer will benefit the least advantaged people. That's where the charity comes from. Because the theory is people shouldn't be penalized for what he or she didn't do. Like if I born handicapped, this is not my fault.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why the charity needs to come in to help me, like the universal income. So that's why the rich people need to pay tax. Because we don't want to discourage people to do entrepreneur, but only under the condition that this entrepreneurship, whatever, will help the least, those people who didn't deserve to be punished, because they didn't do anything wrong. Like I born blind, I didn't do anything wrong. So that's the principle of differences, and that's where the like Canada, maybe some Scandinavian countries, where the social welfare are pretty good. It's kind of
Right.
you're using these things.
All right, let's continue.
Yeah.
So, bigger than people or circumstances. So this is the value of the principles. They don't change. The principles themselves don't change. Only our understanding of them does. And then he says we can expand our limitations through an understanding of the principle of our own growth. The more we learn, the more we can focus the lens through the world we see, or we see the world through. And that's the paradigm shift property, right? And then the next slide, this is 2 slides for this one. We can have security because we depend. So this is those 4 factors of those life support factors. We have a sense of security, or our self-esteem or emotional stability is because we can depend on the principles, right? No matter what's changing in our lives, whether it's other people or our environment, we can have a sense of wisdom and guidance because the maps we have are representative of reality, because the principles are reality is what he says. And then he says, clearly see our direction and steps to success, making decisions using correct data and implementation. So again, you're not just being biased towards one value, you're looking at the data of all the things that are present, and then you're deciding what the best thing to do. And then you get power because you have self-awareness of your knowledge and your proactivity. You're unrestricted by attitudes, behavior, and actions of others, environment, or circumstances. You're free to choose, which is the proactivity thing, actions, but not the consequences of those actions. Principles are universal to everyone, regardless if they are aware of them or not.
You are free, or do you think you are free?
Well, again, what do we mean by freedom? Like, I think free from coercion is very contingent on like maybe social context. But like from what he's saying is like free will. Again, he just derives it from Christianity, but philosophically, we could say that we have a degree of free will in the moments of deliberation that we have.
As a Christian, I have considered many limitations. I can't kill you because in this case, it's not right for my, so it's one example. In a society, I have many limitations. In a family, so at the end, I come again to my first point, Rousseau. It's really our freedom.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's great. It's theory. I love.
Yeah,
and I hope. I dream. But when I go out, I say, what is principle? How can I apply?
We're going to talk about that. Like, that's why and I think it's good for you to study from the beginning of the book. Like, the book is not that expensive, like $20. So if you can get one for next week, you can even get it used at BMV or one of the other bookstores.
Okay.
Try to get this copy because it has the most up-to-date content in it. And and so it's a good thing.
Why they say principles are universal to everyone? So he's promoting absolutism, not relativism. What principles are universal to everyone?
So like in some ways, if you have low cognitive capacity, you may not have self-awareness and it may be difficult for you to be proactive. In that case, no. But he's just saying on average, the normal human being that has that is a functional, mentally healthy person is able to do this. They're like, it's not going to be discriminatory towards some specific individual. Right?
So it's universal for everyone.
Yeah.
What principles? What the contents?
Yeah. It's just a anybody
Okay.
good? Sit over here.
So
You can share the book with me.
what are those principles that he think that are universal?
So like being proactive
Being proactive.
is an effective approach in contrast to being reactive
Oh,
because of the nature of stimulus response, that in between stimulus and response, you can choose to do things.
so please talk about the attitudes. We talk about attitudes.
I'm just like creating like a principle there. I'm trying to distinguish principle from value, because a one-word thing is like almost like a value, but a principle has to be like a directive towards something, I would say. Right? And it's a sound argument because it's based on reality. It is true that as long as you have sufficient cognitive capacity, that you can be aware of your environment, and instead of being reactive, you can be proactive and decide to do something. Right?
So let me ask you this, because he said principles during the COVID, a lot of people think that I shouldn't mention which country. You know, he thought about
China.
More than China. You know.
Okay, you mean I was thinking of the Wuhan thing? Sorry.
Yeah, they think that you heard about that. This COVID is not real.
Okay.
You
mean that? Okay,
the vaccine is terrible. It's totally some mysterious organization. What do you call that? Trying to destroy the world. You know, some people they have enough cognition, right? Ability.
Sure.
But principles are universal. No, I see different groups have different principles, different how to say that,
Well, that's where he says correct principles,
Mhm.
right? And that's where I said that it's a little philosophically vacant in that area, in the sense that like we need to develop our critical thinking skills, and in that case, a certain degree of scientific literacy, right?
Mhm.
And that's not really what this book is about specifically.
Okay.
He's not, and that's where I say that it's missing that philosophical rigor in that context. That learning how to reason and how to think about things, like in the previous book, we were learning a little bit of critical thinking in the context of cognitive distortions, right? And in this book, it's not really about that. This book, it's more about what would be the correct cognition be, right? In the previous one, I was saying, don't do these things. But in this book, I'm saying, do this.
Is it moral or ethics?
In the previous book or in this book?
No, it's this book.
This book, it's not really about ethics per se. Like you could drive a little bit of ethics from it, but it's more about like the coherence of the way you're living your life.
Mhm.
And having principles or a philosophy that's representative of the best way. It's normative to some degree,
Mhm.
right? That we're aiming for a goal,
Mhm.
and then this is like a map of how to kind of get there,
Okay.
right? Okay, let's continue. So I'm going to read from the book a little bit. So I'm on page 136 in this copy. At the first title is A Principle Center. By centering our lives on correct principles, we create a solid foundation for development of the 4 life support factors, right? Security, guidance, wisdom, and power. Our security comes from, so those are like 4 elements of the human condition, right? Or properties that make being human.
Mhm.
So security comes from knowing that, unlike other centers that are subject to frequent and immediate change, correct principles do not change. And when he says correct principles, it's just like facts of nature. If it's a fact of nature, it's always going to be the same, no matter what happens that changes in your life. right? Like developing a habit, the habit of being proactive is based on the principle that there is the nature of stimulus response, and you can pause your reactive response to be proactive instead, right? Going with that.
Would you consider it a law? Like the law of nature?
They're basically the same. Laws and principles in his idea is almost the same.
Mhm.
We can depend on principles. Principles don't react to anything. They don't get mad or treat us differently. They won't divorce us or run away with her best friend. They aren't out to get us, can't pave the way with shortcuts and quick fixes. Don't depend on the behavior of others, the environment, or the current fad for their validity. Principles don't die. They aren't here one day and gone the next. They can't be destroyed by fire, earthquake, or theft. Principles are deep, fundamental truths, classic truths, generic common denominators. Tightly interwoven threads running with exactness, consistency, beauty, and strength throughout the fabric of life. So they're just fundamental properties in this case of the human condition, because these are principles based on effectiveness,
Okay.
right? You can have principles of carpentry, you can have principles of mathematics, you can have principles of, making phones, something like that, right? The principles are just ways that we represent elements of nature linguistically. That's what that really is.
But mathematics, perhaps, though, is all eternal. Do you think this principle never died, is eternal, or can adapt, somehow evaluation in depending on the era? We are now in a new era. Do you think it's the same principle with Socrates? And now,
Yeah.
this principle will be exactly the same in 1,000 years?
So a habit one, be proactive, the principle that that's based on would still be as long as the human condition stays such that it is, it will basically always be the same. If we become invincible and we're timeless, like if fundamental things change about the human condition, then the principles may change, right? But as it stands, like because of the way that time functions and how we're static in time and you can't change time, you're being proactive will always be good. If you could just go back and change stuff, even then it would still be a good thing, being proactive, right? Because then you wouldn't have to go back and change shit a bunch of times, right? If you could just go back in the past and change stuff, even though you can correct things that you didn't like, you still have to go back and do it, right? If you were reactive all day, you're like, oh, that was a crappy day, I have to go back and fix it all, right? So in some ways, it's just the nature of reality. That's really what he's trying to say. Whether or not, like that's the goal, whether or not he's meeting that goal, we'll discuss that and we will evaluate it and then correct it if it ever kind of goes off in any point. Like sometimes, like for me, he makes Christian references and I would prefer to not do that just because I think that it's not necessary, right? You can think about it on your own, whatever, but it doesn't actually strengthen the thesis, because then it's based on, like we said, the existence of God, the validity of the Bible, and those philosophically are going to have problems in them. So we don't even have to go there, right? Leave faith in the faith box. If you need to open the box, but it has its own box, right?
So would you say principles are part of character or personality? Character you can change, right?
Okay.
Personality you can't. And personality is like something that you have. Like,
So
can you change both? I don't know.
So one thing is you're bringing up what he talks in the beginning of the book, the character and the personality ethic. The way that he talks about personality ethic is almost like the psychopath or the narcissist that's using charisma. They really haven't changed their habits. They're just pretending. It's the personality that you see on the outside, but the deep embedded values and habits are incongruent with what you see as an individual on the outside.
So then that's character.
That's the personality
deeper
ethic.
value.
So the character, right, is when your habits are in line with your values. Personality is a larger category that character is inside of.
Got you. Okay.
Like psychologically. So that when you say personality, we have two different definitions here. One,
I wasn't sure which one was which. Which
Yeah,
one was under the umbrella of the other. But that makes
personality is when you know about personality, you ought to be able to predict somebody's behavior in a given situation because you know their personality, right? But sometimes people can act out of character. right? And that's when their behavior or their habit is going against their values.
What if you're transferring values over? Something that wasn't that valuable to you before, but after an experience, you start giving more attention to that value. So how you used to be before without that value would be a different character of who you'd
It would be a
achieve.
character development.
Yeah, so like
Sure.
during that transition, will there be cognitive dissonance? Because you have your old belief of not having the value, or not respecting or not caring about that value, and then deciding to start caring about one of those values.
Yeah, well, revaluation of values is something that Nietzsche talks about.
Mm.
And I think it's important. There's a chapter on the website about that. And it would be just character development. Like we could talk about character like depreciation, where like you're,
Mhm.
you know, you're like, heroin's a great drug. You know what I mean? Like I shoot up with dirty needles all the time. You know what I mean? Like that's if you're, you know, or like just walking down the street and smacking people, it's a great experience. I love it. You know, like you could do that. It could be a new value, right? But you'd be out of, you know, be like, how does that make sense?
Well, yeah.
You know, like you're really changing character on me here. You know what I mean? Like, and so yeah. So I don't know. We could talk. I think we need to be a bit more specific because you can develop new values. Like, I've never been surfing, for example, but I would probably like it.
I wouldn't say it's a value.
You can value surfing, but you mean like
Mhm.
moral values?
Yeah, like family, for example.
Sure.
Mhm.
Or
The NDA is you don't choose. It's according to your parents,
Mhm.
grandparents, and finally, it's as Daniel Goleman said, emotional intelligence sometimes. So you are not able to choose because it depends on your genes.
I believe that, let's say your father and your grandfather were the same way, but they weren't conscious of it. I believe once you become conscious of that bad trait, you can work on becoming the opposite.
Mhm.
Can you not? Like you see a
Um,
trait like short temper, for example.
mhm.
Let's say how grandfather had a short temper, dad has a short temper, and then you notice yourself having a temper.
Mhm.
So in the beginning, you don't really care about it. You kind of just go about life and you think it's part of you. But then if you decide to consciously change that, try to remove the temper through meditation or breathing or thinking before you speak or thinking before you do, I believe like there is certain
Mhm.
things you can override in the genome sequence if you become conscious of it.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
override it like neuropathically.
Yeah, of course you can.
Like
Of course.
neurogenesis.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, of course you can. But that's just being aware of stuff. Like and
Sorry,
values.
just conclude one last thing.
Okay.
So you're not predispositions to your preset beliefs and values.
That's what he's trying to say at the beginning of the book,
Hmm.
right? When he says that being proactive means that you're not limited to your genetic predisposition,
Mhm.
your upbringing, or your current scripts or habits.
Hmm.
And in this chapter, what he talks about, he gives an example of like parenting, and he's like, you know, you might have this personal mission statement, but then in a day-to-day basis, you're not following up to it. So he's like, what we need to do is visualize, and you want to re-script yourself, visualize yourself in as much detail as possible, acting in a loving, kind way to instead of like getting upset.
Mhm. There's a
Um,
phrase that's been going around the internet on Instagram, and it's like basically the analogy of what he's talking about of reevaluating and deconstructing your previous self. It's called burning the ships. They say, and that's like the phrase of burning everything you once like quote unquote knew, or like realizing all the bad habits or all the bad parts of you, and burning those ships and starting from scratch
Okay.
into that conscious change.
yeah, like,
That was pretty cool.
okay, sure. I don't think if burning everything is good, but I think it's like that's like Nietzsche's revaluation talks about like looking at your priorities. He applies it to, you know, like the place of Christianity in the moral trajectory of humanity. And he says that we need to look more at being human specifically instead of reverting our values up into an abstract thing that may or may not exist. But you can also use that just in your own life to look at what your values are. And some things may be good. I don't think you need to totally be nihilistic and burn everything about you, right? but it's important to just be aware of what's there and ask yourself if that's leading you to where you want to be, right? Okay, so let's just let's continue here for a bit.
One last thing.
Okay.
Since we're talking about like values and like belief and all that. So let's say you weren't a man of God, just because you brought up the religious topic
Mhm.
a little bit. So let's say you're not a man of God, or you don't care about God,
Mhm.
or you choose to have the values of the quote unquote opposing team, which is like the evil side, like stealing, cheating,
Okay.
and like stuff like that of that nature. So if you were to like say start believing in God, or try to have the values of someone who believes in God, then I believe that would also change your personality as well, or your character.
It would be a character thing because the
Character.
values are changing.
Mhm.
But and personality would change both of them. But like part of it is that like first there's the dichotomy between like man of God or person of God and just being an evil, immoral individual is not really true, right? Because
From a theological standpoint,
yeah, but like
either one side or the other.
in reality, it's not like
Or
that,
neutral.
you know. And even people that do steal will just justify it by saying that the world's not fair and I'm like a Robin Hood or something like that. And I need to feed my family, and God would want me to feed the family. And the people that have things and have money, they're the evil ones. Like from their perspective, they may just justify it in a way, you know, whatever. So that's not really representative of a moral code, but they make it moral to themselves. They find some way to make it acceptable the behavior, right?
Yeah.
But Mandela, you mentioned Mandela, or Gandhi, this kind of people, the goal is change the world.
Yeah.
Even on risk, my life is on risk, don't mind. I will fight because I have one goal.
Mhm.
It's not, I think, one of these. And for this goal, I want to fight.
Sure. Yeah, that's like, yeah, I think it's just we have to be careful when the ends justify the means,
Mm,
right? And there's a proportionality between means to the end
uh-huh.
and like use of force or like how much harm are we causing. And so that's where we have to, when we do an ethical evaluation, we have to look at the ethical principles, and then the order of those principles is going to matter. Like, what is the most important thing, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, there's some good movies about that too, like where, you know, they justify
Movies?
like, yeah, movie like there's a terrorist who has planted nuclear bombs in a major city, and they capture the terrorist. And they have like 6 hours before the bombs go off, and now it's like, do we torture the terrorist
Uh-huh.
to get him to tell us where the bombs are so we can protect like 4 million
police.
people,
Yeah,
for example, right?
Khan will be against it.
Yeah, the movie's called Unthinkable with Samuel Jackson. It's a little intense. And
Mhm.
they go to great lengths to get the guy to tell them the information. And in the end, he does. And then they save everybody. But it's just trying to show that what means are you willing to go to protect all those people? And it's utilitarian at the same time. The suffering of one person, the terrorist, compared to the death of millions of individuals. Anyways, we are.
You,
So
sorry,
that
you don't need
counts.
a movie. You have this Machiavello ends justify the final
Okay.
goals, and you have in the society, in reality, terrorism.
Mhm.
If someone is killing in one mall because I go to the paradise.
Yeah, and that's selfish of that individual, and it's not. That's why religion is dangerous, and it's not based in fact or reality. Those principles are not coherent,
Okay.
right? Like philosophically, we can't justify that behavior, and it comes down to the appeal to scripture fundamentally and an interpretation of that scripture. So when we talk about epistemology, how do you know something, and the role of interpretation, right, in that knowledge. And that's where being philosophical is important, to learn how to, I think that's one of the things that you do gain out of learning philosophy, is how to look at a text and interpret it in different ways, and then also apply ethics to your own behavior.
What's the name of the movie?
Unthinkable.
Unthinkable.
I think it's called Unthinkable.
So who justifies which like psychologist, I guess, or philosopher, I'm not sure who, if there exists one that believes this, of saying that due to the nature of the actions that a person has done, is like the death penalty justifiable? Like you were saying with like the terrorist,
Mhm.
same concept. So like,
Mhm.
is there like a certain scale that they believe in that will give reason to the torture or the death penalty?
Well, for something like the death penalty, there's little evidence that it's a deterrent. And one thing you could say is if the person has committed heinous crimes and will continue to commit heinous crimes,
Mhm. So then it's justifiable.
there is room for justification there because
Who
that
says that?
it's not about who says it. It's just that,
Or like who? Sorry.
well, you could look up, I'm not sure. I'm not prepared to go through the specifics on capital punishment right now, but you could type in capital punishment, look at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and look at different arguments. But this is an argument, right? And then the other thing is the state of the society. If you don't have the means to hold that individual in a humane way and prevent them from getting out and continuing to hurt people or whatever,
Mhm.
then you may have to like execute them. So like it's like, just because you have to make it's utilitarian again, you have to make a decision. If it's, you're gonna let the sadistic psychopath who like is a cannibal and like a rapist or whatever and a child molester roam around in the forest when you and your family are there and your kids are playing in the meadow, like
Well,
I
of
don't
course, to
know.
lock them up, of course, but I don't believe that.
But if that doesn't exist, if there are no prisons, you're
Oh.
just, it's just you and there's a gun there and it's like, what are you going to do? Right. You have to make a decision, and I think our actions are always, we are always responsible for them to that degree of what we choose to do.
Mm.
And, if I was faced with a circumstance where I believed that my family was at risk, or like if the person was on their way to capture the kid and they were like within the sights of the gun and I had to choose, it's like a trolley example kind of, and I had to pull the trigger, I would pull the trigger. I'm going to try to protect my family. Right. And I think most people would do that. The individual's intentions are bad. The harm that's going to come is severe, and it's your own family. Even if it was someone else's family, I would still try to protect the kid. Right.
I feel like there is ways to avoid that from happening, from taking the life. Like you can immobilize them. You can, like if you're trained, I guess,
Sure.
in that sense. Or
But
like,
all this reaction is in our amygdala. I
Correct.
mean, as a reptilian, we are a little bit. If you try to kill me, I know risk. I react. My reaction, or I some kind of feelings, but it doesn't depend on you. It's not under control. You're kidnapping your the cortex or neocortex.
It's like a fight or flight situation. Okay, let's continue here. We're way off the trails. We're in a different forest entirely here. Okay. So at the bottom of 136, even in the midst of people or circumstances that seem to ignore these principles, we can be secure in the knowledge that principles are bigger than people or circumstances. Bigger in the sense that they're more fundamental in their application. It's not an appeal to authority or relevant to the situation. Thousands of years of history have seen them triumph time and time again.
where are we?
Top of 137 now.
Mhm.
We can be secure in the knowledge that we can validate them in our own lives by our own experience. So that's important. A principle center.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're this
Living in
paragraph.
the mist. Okay.
And so I think it's important that we can test things out, and this goes down to the how-to version of knowledge that we're enacting it and through demonstration, right?
Mhm.
So he says, we're not omniscient. Our knowledge of correct principles is limited by our own lack of awareness of our true nature and the world around us. But other ideas, will come and go, but they'll only stay around if they're based on reality, right? We are limited. We can push back the borders of our limitations. Understanding of the principle of our own growth enables us to search out correct principles with the confidence that the more we learn, the more clearly we focus on the lens through which we see the world. The principles don't change, our understanding of them does. So even in my experience of reading this book now, I am reflecting on my own life and I am being more proactive, like for example, even just with studying, right? And that's a good thing. Like I'm being more effective and efficient in the way that I'm doing things. Yeah.
What does the fourth word mean on the first paragraph? When you
Omniscient,
omniscient, what does that mean?
knowing everything. It's one of the properties that God's supposed to have. The wisdom and guidance that accompany principle-centered living comes from correct maps, our paradigms, from the ways things really are, have been, and will be. So that's what I talk about the human condition, right? Or just the existence, like reality. Correct maps enable us to clearly see where we want to go and how we're going to get there, which is our paradigms again, our perspective on the world. We can make our decisions using the correct data that will make their implementation possible and meaningful. The personal power that comes from a principle-centered living is the power of a self-aware, knowledgeable, proactive individual, unrestricted by the attitudes, behaviors, and actions of others, or by many of the circumstances and environmental influences that limit other people. So again, it's self-reliant because you're not contingent on others to give you permission to act in a certain way. You're doing something that you know is correct because it's representative of reality, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like being in touch with your own existence and the existence that you are within.
Mhm.
The only real limitation of power is and that's just being reasonable at the end of the day. It's using language properly and then reasoning with that language. The only real limitation of power is the natural consequences of the principles themselves. We are free to choose our actions based on our knowledge of correct principles, but we are not free to choose the consequences of those actions. Principles always have, and that's just because we can't know the future, right? So unexpected things happen. Principles always have natural consequences attached to them, positive consequences when we live in harmony with the principles. So he's trying to buffer this a little bit here, but it's not always the case. Because sometimes bad things happen when we have good intentions, or our intentions, or you could just say that you were being naive and the principles weren't representative enough of reality, even if you would, negative consequences when we ignore them. These principles apply to everyone, whether or not they're aware. This limitation is universal. The more we know of correct principles, the greater our personal freedom is to act wisely. By centering our lives on timeless, unchanging principles, we create a fundamental paradigm of effective living. It is the center that puts all of our under centers in perspective. Okay, so now here's our chart. So previously we went through the chart of all the other centers. So now he's going to talk about the principle centered, right? So your security, which is your self-esteem and your emotional stability. If you're principle centered, your security is based on correct principles that do not change, regardless of external conditions or circumstances. You know that true principles can repeatedly be validated in your own life through your own experiences. So you're testing them out. Even though this is anecdotal to some degree, I think that there's an application element that's important, right? That the universality of the principle and then the particular application is important. That's the same way that science functions. So the science is a methodology and there's more than one person doing it. So it is a bit different, but as a practice or a practical philosophy, it kind of needs to be this way.
Let me see.
Mhm.
So I got a question. So based on what we talk about, like centering our lives on timeless and changing principles, I would say some evil people actually also follow these things very
Mhm.
well. For example, Hitler.
Sure.
Hitler is very principle centered,
Mhm.
if in this way, right? So he doesn't care about what the other people say. He's very determined. I gotta conquer the world.
They're just not correct principles. That's what Covey would say. They're not correct.
So did he talk about what is correct?
Well, he just gives us, again, I said this earlier, this is lacking in philosophical rigor because there's no mechanism to evaluate principles in this book, right? What he does, he just gives them to you. He's just like, here are some good principles.
Mhm.
Like the habit of being proactive is based on a principle of stimulus response,
Mhm.
right?
It's a good. I had one question also. Hitler was a monster, one of the big monsters. What about German people? I live in Germany. This is a big discussion. Now, the new German generations, they felt a little bit embarrassed about the history. Why? This is you are a new one. But what about the German people? Hitler was only one.
Yeah, well, I think they refer to it as Nazi Germany. They wouldn't just say like Germany in general, right, Peter?
This time, yes, we know what happened with the population. One crazy,
He was able.
we Ariel race. Why?
He was able to manipulate and quote unquote brainwash those who were serving him very well.
Yeah, it was the use of propaganda, right?
Propaganda.
Like that was the main reason why.
That's
And it's also a similar reason why Trump is
Yeah.
is being able to manipulate the United States. You know what I mean? Or
That's why.
Putin's Russia or North Korea or China,
Yes.
right?
But to follow on you, it's a good question. Because before Hitler went to power, actually German was in Weimar. It's a very democratic, the social democracy, and then German actually produced a lot of philosophers.
Yeah.
From the Kant, Hegel, whatever.
Best.
So I was wondering, you said brainwash. I mean, German has a lot of people. Heidegger, even become a professor, a principal of the. He actually become a Nazi member.
It's
Right.
unfortunate.
So the question is if you say, oh, I don't have enough cognitive ability, I got brainwashed. But German is not that case. German has the most educated people, and still, look at those. They so efficiently murder so many people, so many Jewish. There's a book by Zygmunt talk about. It's very efficient, the concentration camp. So they just scientifically, efficiently murdering a lot of people. So the question is, how come?
The critical thinking. If you don't have critical to think
Yes.
by yourself,
But they are professor.
For sure, you have Nietzsche
Well-
and other. Nietzsche was one of the lion.
Nietzsche?
Nietzsche.
What do you mean by the lion?
The lions is for sure. You're right.
Well, what happened is they compartmentalized the process, and so they didn't tell everybody about what was going on, and they only found they broke it apart into smaller like processes,
Mhm.
and they didn't tell everybody about what was going on, and people found out later, right?
You mean
About like the Holocaust or
Mhm.
like the killing of the Jews in gas chambers and stuff like that.
they don't know?
They didn't know initially what was going on, a lot of the individuals. It was compartmentalized, so you would just be building like the railroad but didn't know what was going on, right? And then within social groups, like the way that they structured it, like I feel that they would impose consequences on individuals, and they would be very, very harsh. And so people were a lot of times in fear of rebelling against their leaders, right? Because they didn't want their families to be killed
Mhm.
and stuff like that. As a measurement of self-improvement, correct principles function with exactness, consistency, beauty, and strength. And so in this chapter, he actually goes to your point and says that there are people that can use the principle-centered approach in a negative way. Well, it's based on correct principles. Like he doesn't again go into that really what it means necessarily, but he says that like you could be very money-centered, for example, and you could use a personal mission statement to make a lot of money, right? And that's misguided because of the reasons that he talks about in this chapter. That your wisdom, guidance, security, and power will be depreciated from focusing on the acquisition of money alone. Okay, let's just continue. Correct principles help you understand your own development, endowing you with the confidence to learn more, thereby increasing your knowledge and understanding. Your source of security provides you with an immovable, unchanging, unfailing core, enabling you to see change as an exciting adventure and opportunity to make significant contributions. So again, we can even add to this and talk about David Burns, right? And in feeling good, how that contributes to our self-esteem, and how our self-esteem is a constant that never changes. And we can utilize our awareness of cognitive distortions to make sure we're at least looking at the world in a healthy way.
Where are you?
I'm just around guidance now.
Guidance.
I'm just adding other stuff. So yep.
You make the book with Feeling Good, where you make these conscious decisions to monitor your thought and your self-talk. Once you get the hang of it, and once you can do it on the fly, that becomes subconscious, right? Conscious programming
Yeah, well, you becomes a habit
becomes a habit.
once you get good at it, but you have to put some effort in first.
Oh, yeah. But then, like, that's what I believe the hard part is, creating the new neural networks for the new habit. And then the old habit its connection loosens. Because like cells that don't communicate with each other, I believe they get,
Yeah,
not
to
that they
some
die
degree,
off, but they
or weakened.
weaken.
To some degree, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he talks about in this book, he talks about the power of gravity. He talks about how the spaceship was leaving Earth, and then the initial liftoff, it used more energy than the entire trip. And so when you initially are learning a new habit,
I like that.
right, it's very difficult, but once you learn that habit, it becomes automated, right? So guidance. Your guidance guided by a compass, which enables you to see where you want to go and how you'll get there. You use accurate data, which makes your decisions both implementable and meaningful. You stand apart from life situations, emotions, and circumstances, and look at the balanced whole. Your decisions and actions reflect both short and long-term considerations and implications. In every situation, you consciously, proactively determine the best alternative based on decisions and conscious, educated by principles.
Can you give an example of this guidance?
So guidance is like your perspective on things, right? Or how you make decisions. And so when you're guiding yourself with specific decisions, you want to look at all the information relevant, all of the factors, instead of ignoring certain information and only focusing on one thing. Like, my partner says this, I always will do what my partner says. That is a poor form of guidance, because they may not be around, they may be incorrect, they may not have your interests in mind. So if you look at all the information in the situation, you can use that data to determine what the best decision will be.
Sometimes I like to follow my partners.
Okay, well,
I'm just imagining that's kind of sweet, right?
I guess so, but it's like, you can have a principle that says that sometimes I like to do this. However, I will always be aware of everything and then make a decision. I will be proactive, and whether I will just do what my partner wants, or if I need to exercise my agency and make a decision for myself, because I know this is what the best thing to do is. Wisdom. Your judgment encompasses a broad spectrum of long-term consequences and reflects a wise balance and quiet assurance. You see things differently, and thus you think and act differently from largely reactive worldview. Your view of the world through a fundamental paradigm for effective, provident living. You see the world in terms of what you can do for the world and its people. You adopt a proactive lifestyle. Proactive living, provident. Here. Proactive lifestyle, seeking to serve and build others. You interpret all of life's experiences in terms of opportunities for learning and contribution. Did you get back in easily, or was it difficult?
I waited for a student.
I am. That was the sneaky ninja move. And so the wisdom here is about perspective again, and a sense of judgment, right? And knowing about consequences and seeing consequences. Let's go back to our definition of wisdom really quick. Yeah, so wisdom is your perspective on life, balance and understanding how the various parts and principles apply to relate to each other. So a coherence, which involves your judgment, discernment, comprehension, gestalt, or oneness. Guidance is your source of direction in life, like what's important, where to go. Your map, your internal frame of reference that interprets what's happening out there, standards or principles, implicit criteria that govern your decision making. And yeah, okay, so good. So lastly, power. Your power is limited only by your understanding and observance of natural law and correct principles, and by the natural consequences of the principles themselves. You become a self-aware, knowledgeable, proactive individual, largely unrestricted by the attitudes, behaviors, or actions of others. Your ability to act reaches far beyond your own resources and encourages highly developed levels of interdependency. Your decisions and actions are not driven by your current financial or circumstantial limitations. You experience interdependent freedom. So again, your motivation or ability to act is your power. And so your power will be more robust if your awareness of the situation is based on principles than some biased, incorrect perspective. Yes, Dimitri.
So this is basically a summary of everything that we've learned so far.
This is a summary of kind of. This is
Like a
little bit, but it's more of a summary of just what a being principle centered is.
I feel like for a good book, it'd be a good idea to have like a chapter 1 to 4 summary, let's say, 4 to 8 summary.
Okay.
As like a refreshment for everything that you've read before. Just like for a style of the book.
Yeah, what I'm going to do another review after this section on everything up until this point.
Mhm.
So be here next week or the week after.
So I had a feeling after reading this, I trying to look at the words, but I was wondering, there's a word, where's the courage comes in, because using Mandela as example, because Mandela at first it's not not a non-violent promoter. He actually joined some kind of violence, whatever underground.
Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
So that's a strength. That's a courage. You just come out. You know what I'm saying. You know, sometimes you see people know everything, but they just lack of the courage to stand out.
I'm not sure courage or more as a leadership.
Something like that. Yeah.
Well,
I
courage
believe
would be
it's
in,
courage too.
Bravery.
So
Bravery.
bravery. So where's the
it
bravery?
would be in
Yes,
security.
yeah.
That's the emotional resilience part.
Right.
The courage to stand out was like the security in yourself to put yourself into a situation. And then you'd also need the power to make the action. So there's the feeling, the self-esteem part, right? And then the action part, which is kind of two things. Be security
Well, how
and
can I
power.
have the courage? How can people have courage?
You can have courage. So, well, Aristotle would say that you would build it slowly, right? With smaller instances, and then you apply it to more complicated, more challenging situations. And that's the development of practical wisdom.
Who said that?
You would-
Aristotle, you said?
Yes, in the Nicomachean Ethics. We can go through that book too.
A bullfighter. Bullfighter. It's a bull is a good example also.
Mm-hmm. You gotta start as an amateur, as a novice. And by putting yourself in that difficult situation of being face to face with the bull so many times helps you work on that bravery or that,
No,
that
yeah.
confidence or
A warrior in Ukraine.
Identify. So I think like confidence is a good term, and self-efficacy, right? Psychologically. And you want to look at situations and circumstances that are challenging, kind of map them out, and feeling good would help with this too. Look at your attitudes towards them and have healthy cognitions, and then start with ones that are not as difficult and work your way up to more difficult ones. And you want to just practice that. That's would be the development of courage or self-efficacy, your confidence in completing tasks.
Just seems some people, even when they're very young,
Mhm.
it seems already, showing that, like a little kids, like, even in Bible, they talk about David, Godzilla, right? What was that?
Goliath.
Goliath, yeah. So it's not like that he learned so much things. He just have that, he just stand out. We saw that in kids, like on the street, somebody bullying you, you just fight back, you saw that. You saw
Yeah.
that, you don't know how that happened,
Some
Maybe-
people might have a genetic predisposition. They might just be a bit more, have an instinct for that. They might lack fear and just are psychopaths a bit in a healthy way,
Mhm.
right? They just don't, like, their amygdala or their limbic system works a bit differently. You know what I mean? Like, some people don't experience fear the same way. You could just not be scared because you're not aware of the consequences. You just don't know, right?
There's a born, it's a gift.
You would call it a gift, but it could be a bad thing too. Those people get themselves killed, right? All right, let's continue. So here we have a diagram. Principles are at the center, and all of these other values are around the principles. And so you can choose how to balance your life, right? Based on evaluating and knowing what correct
Mhm.
principles are, right?
Mhm.
So he says your paradigm is the source from which your attitudes and behaviors flow. A paradigm is like a pair of glasses. It affects the way you see everything in your life. If you look at things through the paradigm of correct principles, what you see in life is dramatically different from what you see through any other centered paradigm underneath this one.
Okay.
So he's saying that you want to have a healthy paradigm. Remember at the beginning of the book when we have the young woman and the old woman image, right? The way we look at the world is important. And he's trying to get us to look at the world through the lens of principles, which is like saying you're being philosophical and you're being reasonable, right?
Mhm.
For a quick understanding of the difference your center makes, look at the example of the specific problem as seen through different paradigms. Put on each pair of glasses. So each one of these values, or you could centers, or is it like a different pair of glasses, to feel the response that flows from each center. So I talked about this briefly earlier. So your partner, your wife or husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, best friend, invites you to a concert. You got the tickets. The other person's excited. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. All of a sudden, your boss calls you into their office and they say they need your help until the very evening because there's an important meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow. If you're spouse-centered or family-centered, your main concern will be your wife. You tell your boss you can't stay and you take the person to the concert to make her happy. You feel that you have to stay to protect her job, but you do so grudgingly, anxious about her response, trying to justify your decision to protect yourself from her disappointment or her anger. If you're money centered, your main thought will be how much money you'll get working overtime, and you might get a raise. You could also be concerned that you spent money on the tickets and you don't want to lose the money from the tickets. You would call your wife and tell her that you have to stay or sell the tickets or something like that, assuming they'll understand that economic demands come first. If you're work-centered, you'll be thinking of the opportunity. You'll learn more about the job. You can make some points with the boss, advance your career, make yourself feel good because you put in more hours. It'll be evidence that you're a hard worker, and the wife should be proud of you. If you're possession-centered, you might be thinking of the things that you could buy from the overtime, or you could be focused on the ticket as a possession. You'd be considered that the reputation at work is a possession and how that would increase. Everyone would know how noble you are. There's a little confusion here. That's more of a work-centered thing. If you're pleasure-centered, you would not want to go to work. You'd want to go to the concert. And yeah, if you're friend-centered, you might be influenced by if you invited friends to go with you to the concert as well. Or if you have friends at work, they would want you to stay late. If you're enemy-centered, people could feel that if you stay at work, if there's a person there you have a problem with, you'd be better than them, and so you would be motivated for that. If you're religious-centered, you could be religious. You could be influenced by other people that are going to the concert, if it's like a religious concert, whether or not there's religious people at work, and what being a good religious individual would mean to you specifically. So, for example, if you're a service-minded person, or if you're seeking material wealth, what your religious denomination says about those things. If you're self-centered, you'll be focused on what you do or what's most good for you. It would be better for you to go out for the evening. Would it be better for you specifically to make the boss happy? How the different options will affect you will be your main concern. So these are the different centers applied to the specific context, right? So as we consider various ways of looking at the single event, we were reminded of the young old lady perception diagram or image at the beginning. Your problems are interactions with each other. Can you see how fundamentally our centers affect us? Right down our values, right down to our motivations, daily decisions, or our actions, our interpretations of events. Understanding your own center is important. Like, what matters to you? What's at the center of your life? If that center does not empower you to be a proactive person, it becomes fundamental to your effectiveness to make necessary paradigm shifts to create a center that will. So if you're currently work-centered, if all that matters to you is work and everything is secondary to that, ask yourself if that's actually the best thing for you so that you can be proactive and make being principle-centered, in this case, the most important thing to you. A principle-centered person, you try to stand apart from the emotion of the situation and from other factors that would act on you. Evaluate the options, looking at the balanced whole, work needs, family needs, other needs that may be involved, possible implications of the various alternative decisions. Come up with the best solution, taking all factors into consideration. So he's deliberating. He's thinking about all of the things and not just making a decision quickly based on a heuristic or a bias. Whatever my boss says, I do whatever my boss says. And that's the automatic response in all cases. If work says I have to work, I always work, right? What we want to do is we want to evaluate what is going on in our lives and then determine what the best course of action is on a case-by-case situation using some form of a principle method to do so, right?
So first of all, this case in the Scandinavian countries, the work policy there, you might be more familiar with me. The boss are not allowed to. I mean, it's sort of against the work ethics to ask the employee to work overtime.
You mean the hierarchy? It's very socialism. Is
Yeah.
the kind of idea of
Yeah,
socialism?
because they say, the balance
They
of,
try to have
life, family, and work is supposed to.
The
Even you
priorities.
want to work overtime, they think you are destroying the work ethics there.
Yeah, and that's I think that's like shift work gives people cancer. It increases your risk of diabetes. Like, it's bad, you know. It deteriorates your brain. You know, it's not a good thing because you get lack of sleep, and the more lack of sleep you have, it has very negative effects on
Does,
your
does
cognitive function.
Canada allow this boss, the labor law allow boss to
Demand or ask.
ask, demand?
They can ask. I don't know about demanding, but they can ask you.
If you don't work, did they fire you?
No, you would get in trouble for that. The employer would.
It's a little bit propaganda because the highest depressed children are in the Scandinavian countries and
Mhm.
also sad people. Why? They have the best quality of life and the highest depressed
Really?
people.
Is it Balkan as well or just Scandinavian?
No.
Up north.
Balkan is East Europe.
Yeah.
It could
It's
be that,
communism. It's nothing to
Is the weather?
yeah, it could be seasonal affective disorder. But we'd have to look into that. That's interesting. I don't know about that.
No,
I'm not sure. All right, let's get back in the saddle here. So, whether you go to the concert or stay at work is really a small part of an effective decision. You might make the same choice with a number of other centers. There are several important differences when you are coming from a principle-centered paradigm. First, you're not being acted upon by other people or circumstances. You are proactively choosing what you determine to be the best alternative. You make your decision consciously and knowledgeably. Second, you know your decision is most effective because it is based on principles with predictable long-term results. Third, what you choose to do contributes to your ultimate values in life. Staying at work to get the edge on someone at the office is an entirely different thing from your life from staying because you value your boss's effectiveness and you genuinely want to contribute to the company's welfare, right? So doing it because you're trying to get at somebody is a different thing than trying to help a guy out, right?
The intention.
Yeah.
Is a huge role.
Because it's a social comparison thing, right? It's like narcissistic.
Mhm.
Experiences that you have as you carry out your decisions take on a quality and meaning in the context of your life as a whole. Fourth, you can communicate to your wife and your boss within the strong networks you've created in your interdependent relationships. Because you are independent, you can be effectively interdependent. You can decide to delegate what is delegable and come in early next morning to do the rest. So there's a way for you to figure shit out, right? You can think about stuff and then manage that stuff.
Mhm.
Finally, you feel comfortable about your decision, whatever you choose to do, and can focus on it and enjoy it. As a principle-centered person, you see things differently. And because you see things differently, you think differently, you act differently. You have a high degree of security, guidance, wisdom, and power that flows from a solid, unchanging core. You have the foundation of a highly proactive and highly effective life. Right?
Is that simple?
Yep.
Well, he's making it that simple.
I believe it is.
Just tell your boss, my wife is my boss now. So, you know,
Yes,
Sure. So part of it is he's saying you could be reactive, like all of these other centers are centers of reactivity.
There is many prejudices. Italian, Mediterranean countries. You think one case and you think it's a global population.
Okay.
A mediocre Italian is like Canadian.
So he wants us to be aware of not being reactive, and the different centers are examples of different different ways that we could be reactive, things that are the impetus of being reactive. Where does it come from? Right? It comes from this center of work. It comes from this center of our relationship. It comes from this center of church, right? All right, let's continue. So next slide.
Basically, you are saying maybe on the surface, the choice you make is probably the same, but the thinking process, if a principle centered person will be different. It's not about the surface, what the ultimate choice this guy or that guy do is about how he make that choice, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's exactly right, because you want to be proactive in how you make the choice, not just make the choice reactively based on one of these different factors. You want to think about those factors and just don't think about one of them, right? There's many things going on in different situations.
But to be proactive,
Mhm.
you need motivation. I mean, it's a Latin word, move to action.
Yes.
So this kind of motivation push you to be proactive.
So that's the power. The 4 life support factors.
Power.
He would say power is that one. And if you base your map or your perspective on principles, like the principle of take my time to think deliberately about the circumstance and then make a conscious, reasonable decision based on the circumstance. That will give you power in almost all contexts, right? Unless it's like a life or death, like I don't have to respond immediately kind of thing, to do the right thing. And then when you're confident, you're like, I'm going to do this, like buying a car. You know, you need to think about it, evaluate the options, and then you're like, this is the best decision for me, and then you do that thing, right?
I do remember just to make these things
Yep.
more deeper. Basically, what I talk about, make me think about another famous book called Think Fast and Slow.
Yes,
So they talk about system 1 and system 2.
yes,
Basically, what talking about here, like seeing things, proactively thinking things, everything. The thinking takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
We are actually using system 2,
yes.
but according to thinking fast and slow, you know that, right?
I have it in my book list.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read.
So it's sometimes very difficult because energy thinking doesn't come just freely.
Yep.
We all have this moment, tired, whatever, and my brain doesn't work, now it's great, you can talk to friends, now it's my best shape. But I think what's the author's name? Daniel
Kahneman.
Kahneman,
Yeah.
I think he has the idea, not just use the system 2, but also because system 1 is also I think he's promoting like you need to use smartly, because system 1 sometimes it's a faster reaction, like you have a tiger comes
Yeah.
about you, you still think, oh, what this principle, you got killed,
Mhm.
right? So what do you think?
Yeah, like there are moments where it's time to sit down and deliberate and think about stuff, but there are moments when you can use your instincts to kind of think for you, right?
And
And
sometimes you have to use priorities.
Mhm.
Mhm.
and so I've read some kind of his papers, and I've studied like the availability heuristic, representative heuristic, and like base rate fallacy. Like I just haven't read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, but I've studied the stuff that it's based on. So I don't know his,
There's a lot of psychological.
yeah, I don't know his final conclusion in the text, so I can't comment on that. But I know about the different biases or heuristics that he's referencing.
Like one example, I talk about like time management. We all know this. In some moment of the day,
Mhm.
we are actually in better shape of thinking things. Like in the evening, this is good, but in the evening after the long day, you still want to do some serious thinking. It's tough, So what I do is choose the best moment of your life, your day, to do the most important things, something like that, and then
What time? What time during the day?
it's different from different people. So you need to observe. For me, it's like in the morning.
Usually after you wake up, it depends on, some people, it'll be a couple hours, but
There's this up and down because there's a lot of this what do you call that? Your
stasis,
bio situation is different.
homeostatic.
Yeah,
like
homeostatic,
drive,
yeah. So
Okay, so I skipped this. I didn't read this slide before. I'm supposed to read through it now. So principle-centered, down to effectiveness, down to motivations, daily decisions, actions, and paradigm shifts. Not reacting to emotion of a situation and evaluate options, determining the best solution. If you're principle-centered, you're not being acted upon by other people or circumstances. You're proactively choosing the best alternative, making decisions consciously and knowledgeably. Decision is most effective because it's based on long-term predictable results. Contribute to your ultimate values, and you see things differently, thinking differently, and acting differently. So that's from the chart. Okay, next slide. So this is where it comes down to. So he says that you can write a personal mission statement. And what that's going to do is it's going to incorporate what your values are. And then you can use that as like an ideal standard. And then you have your principles to get you through specific situations to meet that ideal standard, right? So what does this thing do? It's a clear lens to see the world with, then focus the lens on how we will relate to the world. So Frankl says you detect rather than invent your mission. Man is asked by life what his meaning is and can only answer through being responsible. It's a quote from Frankl. So we want to proactively working within our circle of influence, the things that we can actually have an effect or we're in control over. Meaning comes from within. We're going to review our personal mission statement regularly to revise it as insights or circumstances change. Next slide, really
What
quick.
does detect rather than invent our mission mean? What
He
does-
says that you don't create it out of nowhere. You have to kind of sense your identity and detect it. That's
To
Victor
influence
Frankl.
our circle, do you mean a little bit of manipulation?
No, so in the chapter on being proactive, so if you have time between now and next week, you can review the chapter on being proactive. He talks about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. The
Mhm.
circle of influence is that which you can do something about. The circle of concern is all the things that matter to you that you're worried about. You want to shrink the things that you're concerned about to match that which you have influence over, and then expand what you have influence over and what you're concerned about. And you can have more influence than concern. You can have a lot more, you can determine the outcome of many things, but not be so worried about everything, right? So your personal mission statement becomes your own personal constitution, like you're your own country, right? And it's a solid expression of your vision, where you want to go, and your values, what your character is. It's the criterion for everything in life that is measured by. It's a process. The process of writing it is as important as the product itself. Writing your personal mission statement changes you by forcing you to reflect on your priorities and align your behaviors with your beliefs. Okay, so let's look at the book. Page 142. As we go deeply within ourselves, we understand and realign our basic paradigms to bring them in harmony with correct principles. We create both an effective, empowering center, clear lens. Okay, we're getting some beep beeps here. We can then focus that lens on how we, as unique individuals, relate to that world. Frankl says, detect rather than invent our missions in life. Each of us has an internal monitor or sense, a conscience that gives us an awareness of our own uniqueness and the singular contributions that we make in it. So he's going to quote Frankl here. Everyone has their own specific vocation or mission in life. Therein, they cannot be replaced, nor can their life be repeated. Everyone's task is as unique as their specific opportunity to implement it. And seeking to give verbal expression to that uniqueness, we're reminded of the fundamental importance of proactivity, of working within our circle of influence. To seek some abstract meaning to our lives out in the circle of concern is to abdicate our proactive responsibility, place our own first creation in the hands of circumstance and other people. So that's bad. Meaning comes from within. Frankl says, man should not ask what the meaning of their life is, but rather recognize that it is they who asked. Each person is questioned by life. Only they can answer to life by answering from their own life. To life, they can only respond by being responsible. Personal responsibility or proactivity is fundamental to the first creation. You think about it in the mind first, and you do it in reality. Habit 1 says, you are the programmer. Habit 2, write the program. Until you accept the idea that you are responsible, you are the programmer. You won't really invest in writing the program. As proactive people, we can begin to give expression to what we want to be and to do in our lives. We can write a personal mission statement, a personal constitution. A mission statement is not something you write overnight. It takes deep introspection, careful analysis. I would prefer to say reflection, thoughtful expression, and often many rewrites to produce it in its final form. It may take you several weeks or even months before you feel really comfortable with it, before you feel it is a complete and conscious expression of your innermost values and directions. Even then, you may review it regularly and make minor changes as the years bring additional insights or changing circumstances.
Question. So this is very powerful. Frankl's work. Everyone has its own mission in life.
Mhm.
And does he? How do we? Does he make an argument for? This is a very powerful statement.
Yeah.
So how do we know? Because of the counter argument will say we don't have a mission. Everyone dies at the end. So how do you prove that everyone has a mission in life? Everyone dies.
Well, your mission would be what you do before you died. The death is not the mission. The mission was what you, and again, in Covey's terminology, being proactive, being aware of your environment, of your circumstances, and making a decision on what you want to do with your life is your mission.
But why should I do that? Why should I be? Because the actually the Buddhism
Mhm.
has this kind of argument. Buddhism actually, I don't know. They give you like a metaphor. They give you like the metaphor is like you are like a fish in the water.
Yeah.
And then the water is going down. The death is just next day, just nearby. You're always hungry. You are going to. It's not like you have such a great things before you can die. You're just like a sand, a castle made on a sand on a beach. You eventually collapse. So I guess it's very powerful. I like it.
Mhm.
But if somebody say,
But depends on the people. For some people, believers, this is the beginning of a new life.
so is this a belief or is this a philosophical argument? It's just a belief, like I believe in God, so it's just a personal belief. But
Well, it's not a faith-based belief. It's based on what he's saying is having a personal mission statement will align your identity so that you're more effective as a person, so that you can determine what your values are, and then you can behave in a way that is in line with those values. So he gives some examples in the book as well.
that's perfect. I know, but he didn't seems like there's still an answer. There's a void there. So
Okay.
like I know this will become efficient, but why? But why there's how do you prove that a person will have a mission in his life? How do you prove that?
Well, it's not that you prove it in that way. It's just that because you can be proactive, you can determine what the end will be.
Mhm.
This habit, right, is called begin with the end in mind. Right? And at the beginning of the chapter, he says, visualize your funeral and visualize what people will say about you at your funeral. And what would you like them to say? And what he's trying to say is, what do you want your life to amount to? What kind of person do you want to be? And if you don't care, then that apathy is like a different thing. But for people that do care, you can be proactive, right? Which is the first habit on how you're going to structure your life. You can identify what standard, like right here, he said it, right? Like he says, does it say it here?
You have to know
Uh,
your identity.
yeah.
Because it's your unique mission.
Yes,
It's not replaced and it's not replicated.
very good.
Everyone has different.
I like that very much, but since we have philosophy society,
Yeah.
I want to bring a little bit. Albert Camus.
Yeah.
Albert Camus has a famous novel called Outsider.
Okay.
I don't know, it's basically describe a character which doesn't even care.
Pony
he-
Boy.
His mom died. That's a famous chapter. His mom died, and then he was like, he was indifferent.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. And then he shot someone on the beach just randomly. Without just because of the weather is too hot or something like that. So it's a very ridiculous thing.
Mhm.
So he describes something like this character, even in Dostoevsky, in his novel, he also talked about some character. Just there's a young guy, just randomly just killed the house, the landlord, who rent just because he said existentialism. I could do anything,
Yeah.
I could make a meaning, So
Yeah.
philosophy talk about. I know this is great. This is efficient. This is, but still there's a something like a they didn't answer that. They didn't answer the question. Why? I know if I have a mission, then I could be efficient, but that doesn't seems like a directly answer.
He's saying that everybody
Why?
has different mission according to their identity. Because
Yes.
everyone has different identity.
But this
Yes.
is one kind of the predetermination, or we are totally free.
Well, some things are going to be slightly predetermined, not by God per se, just by where you come from and who you
No.
are.
Mhm.
Like part of your identity is not really your choice, right? But there's a certain point where you can choose.
Mhm.
Like in a moment, there's a moment where you can begin that decision about who you want to be. And really, he's just trying to say that your life is on a trajectory anyways.
There is a movie, I think is a great, according, I know I can predict what you are doing in a few minutes. Because I know you and I can predict it. This is a very interesting movie. I don't remember this.
Talking
is
about
very-
movie, Woody Allen has another movie. He's actually talking about a professor. He believes in existentialism, so he killed one of his partners. Just to prove the philosophy. Woody
Okay.
Allen. So this is a very deep thing. You know, just there's some. You know, basically what it says. Yeah, Franco, you said
There is-
everyone
our
has a
life, yeah.
different has its
Mission
own
is like
mission.
purpose.
But maybe someone will ask Franco,
Yeah, our life is a
how
line,
do you know?
and one moment.
How do you know?
It's-
How- This is a statement, this is a belief. How do you know
Well,
that I have a mission?
It's
How
based
come I
on,
don't know?
it's based, so again, the mission statement is a way to be effective with the kind of person that you are. And persons in general have the capacity of proactivity. And so what the mission statement does is it aligns your proactivity towards a specific goal, which is just the mission statement, right?
Another movie, The Game, Al Pacino, The Game.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. We can play a game because I know all together here for I can predict for any reason and I can play. It's a very excellent movie.
Okay.
Excellent.
The Game.
The Game.
I know one by Michael Douglas,
Hmm.
The Game. I'm not sure about the
Al
Al Pacino.
Pacino.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? So we're already going to be going in certain directions, right? And what so there's the principle-centered approach. That's one thing. And what that does is it helps you determine what to do in situations so you're not just biased towards one value,
That's true. That's
right? So there's that part. And then, so once you have that part, that means that as you're faced with different situations, you can be objective and reasonable as you go through those situations. But we have to be aware that there is some end, right? And the end doesn't have to be a point in time. It can just be the general accumulation of all of those situations,
Mhm.
right? And you, because of your proactivity, you can determine how you navigate that stuff, right? And that accumulation will amount to something, which fundamentally, is like how people see you in the end, what you've done with your life, and those things will establish meaning. And so the personal mission statement, the purpose for that is just to it's just to make you more effective, really.
They should have shown a example of a.
We do. Yeah, it's coming.
Oh,
Yeah, we didn't have to stop the bus.
I like that.
We have to stop the bus. We got a couple apples. We're gonna keep on going.
Hey.
Okay, so that's the purpose, right? It's based on the principle of what the habit of proactivity because remember, the principles are a reality. They're based on the laws of nature in some ways. And because of our stimulus response orientation towards our environment and ourselves, because of our self-awareness, right? We can be proactive, and that gives us a huge plethora of free will, you could say, right? I'm going to use the term. And
Free will.
that's what he says, right? He says that there are endowments, there are properties of consciousness, like our conscience, our moral compass, our free will, our imagination, and one more.
creativity.
No, it's the imagination one. Anyways, it's in the previous chapter. And yeah. And so by being proactive, you can become something, you can do stuff. This is supposed to empower you, right? So in Maslow's hierarchy, for example, if you utilize these things, you can meet all your needs at the lower levels of the hierarchy such that you can have that self-actualization. So to be truly human, in some ways, we could argue, like you can say, like the spectrum of humanity. There's just existing and like plugging yourself into a feeding tube, and then that's it. And you just exist. But really, you probably wouldn't be that healthy because you're not exercising and you're almost in a vegetative state, right? And then there's the person that goes to the fullest extent of their humanity, like Euclid or Aristotle or like Elon Musk. right? And then you can have a spectrum, like people that achieve a lot. Is it moral or immoral, right? You have like Hitler. There's like, fucking Stalin. There's a little bit of Trump in there, right? With this Project 2025 fucking stuff,
That's so scary.
right? So you can do a lot. Are you doing good? Or are you doing bad? And how do we evaluate it?
It's so scary for you. What about Russian people? No,
What about
no, today.
Yes.
Ask Russian people.
Or the Chinese people, the same thing. It's hard for them.
Even
to-
100%, 80%, they love Putin.
Well, again, we can go into that. So they have to say that too, though, because if they say anything else, then they can be thrown in jail.
Yeah.
It's hard to know if that data is accurate because you don't have the freedom to really be honest. Right? So it's tough. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, you change your mind for many factors.
You're just like, I don't care. I'll just say Putin's great because I don't want to be like Alexei Navalny's wife now has been
Mhm.
charged criminally and she's supposed to go to jail.
Who?
The wife of the lead. So,
Lavani?
yeah, his wife.
But wasn't she already in German?
She's in the West. I'm not sure where.
Uh-huh.
But if she ever goes back to Russia or if they find her, they'll probably just kill her or something. She's in a very unsafe position. Okay, anyways, let's just the bus is moving. Okay, so where are we here? We'll start here. As proactive people, we can begin to give expression to what we want. So just keep this in mind, what you talked about, and we're going to weave it back in. We're going to continue though and just see if he answers it.
Keep this in mind. Which in mind?
The criticism you brought up just now.
Oh, the criticism. No,
It's
no,
okay.
no. Just deepening.
Yeah, it's okay. We got the shovel. We're digging. It's fine. We can begin to give expression to what we want to be.
I like that.
Right? What do we want to be? And that's he would say is important. And the personal mission statement is going to help us articulate that. You can just be the apathetic person. Your mission statement could be, it doesn't matter if anyone dies or if I killed them. I do not care. Like that could be your mission statement. All
Well,
right.
some criminals have that.
Antisocial or psychopaths. Okay. And do so in our lives. We can write a personal mission statement, a personal constitution. Okay. So a mission statement is not something you write overnight. Sorry about this part. So skip the next section. Fundamentally, your mission statement becomes your constitution, a solid expression of your vision and values, becomes the criterion by which you measure everything else in your life. So he finished reviewing his own mission statement. He does this regularly. He went to a beach. He took a few hours. After he reviewed it, he felt a sense of clarity, a sense of organization and commitment, and a sense of exhilaration and freedom. So those are some reasons why you would do this.
So I should go to the beach. That's the lesson.
Yeah.
And do the mission statement.
Beach or forest works, in my opinion.
Should I bring anything to the beach?
Well, you can read what he did. He brought his organizer and he hammered it out. Because remember, it's just not about being pleasure centered, right? Just going to the beach could be pleasure centered. Sorry, I'm just trying to teach this shit. Okay, so next, the process is as important as the product. Writing or reviewing a mission statement changes you because it forces you to think through your priorities deeply, carefully, and to align your behavior with your beliefs. As you do, other people begin. So it's a way to improve the integrity of your character, right? Character defined as your behavior and habits in line with your values.
So Achilles.
Yes.
What's your mission?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I have a mission
You
statement.
didn't go to the beach? You
Well,
haven't?
my mission statement, when I wrote one earlier, it was to express in words how to help people with mental health. That's a basic. To go through the journey of suffering and then stay in that suffering until I could articulate it in language. And I made myself do that for a long time. Now I can just explain shit, but before I wasn't able to. And I just stayed in those moments of suffering until I knew what to say. In my early 20s.
You know, Abraham, the
Who?
prophet, Abraham.
Abraham?
God told him, you have a mission. He knew many prophets.
It's just whether or not those are coherent. I would say that his mission statement was not coherent.
No, but some people, but.
I know Achilles is gonna say that.
I have to. It's my job. Yeah, it's true. And the same
Perhaps
thing.
the God is inside you and you know the mission.
Yeah. Well, it's just when God starts telling you to sacrifice your son, as you would do with a lamb,
As well.
a little, I'm gonna question that, and then we'll say, I don't know
Yes.
if you're, or I'm not gonna let you do that, bud. I'm gonna stop you. As you do, other people will begin to sense that you're not being driven by everything that happens to you. You have a sense of mission about what you're trying to do, and you're excited about it. Next page. Okay. So next
Thank you.
slide.
Thank you for sharing your mission.
I'm gonna, but now I've read this, I feel it would be good for me to spend some time writing it a bit more. Like have a thing down there and then work on it a little bit, you know?
Because if the mission is like a constitution, even the constitution, they have a amendment. Do you have amendment?
Like,
Like the US.
have I changed stuff recently?
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, for sure. Like I focus on feeling in the moment to guide myself through stress instead of disregarding how I feel in stressful situations and focusing on the goal only. That would be an amendment, not really, but more of an addition. Okay,
Yep.
page 144. So using your whole brain, self-awareness allows us to, from the slide, allows us to examine our thoughts. The brain dominance theory, left is logical, right is creative. So he goes through this left, right brain stuff. I think and he even says in here that there is more information that will be given to us through studies. We'll just kind of review it a little bit here. So our self-awareness empowers us to examine our own thoughts. It's helpful in creating a personal mission statement because of the two unique human endowments that enable us to practice habit two, imagination and conscience, primarily functions of the right side of the brain. A great deal of research has been conducted for decades on what is to become brain dominance theory. Each hemisphere of the brain, left and right, tends to specialize in and preside over different functions, process different kinds of information, and deal with different kinds of problems. The left hemisphere is more logical, verbal. The right hemisphere is more intuitive and creative. The left deals with words, right deals with pictures, left with parts and specifics, right with wholes and relationships between the parts. The left deals with analysis, means to break apart. The right deals with synthesis, means to put together. The left deals with sequential thinking. The right deals with simultaneous and holistic thinking. The left is time-bound, the right is time-free. Again, some of this could be up for revision, but I just didn't have time to do research on these specific things. We're just going to go through this. People use both sides of the brain. One side or the other generally tends to dominate each individual. The ideal would be to cultivate and develop the ability to have a crossover between both sides of the brain so that a person could first sense what the situation is called for, then use the appropriate tool to deal with it. People tend to stay in the comfort zone of their dominant hemisphere and process every situation according to either right or left. Maslow says so this is Maslow's hammer. It's like a bias. He who is good with a hammer tends to think everything is a nail. Another factor that affects the young old lady perception difference. Right and left brain people tend to look at things differently. We live in primarily left brain dominant world. Words and measurement and logic are enthroned. More creative, intuitive, sensing, artistic aspect of our nature is often subordinated. Many of us find it more difficult to tap into our right brain capacity. Description that he just gave is oversimplified. We are capable of performing many different kinds of thought processes, and we barely get to tap our potential. As we become aware of different capacities, we can consciously use our minds to meet specific needs in more effective ways.
This left and right brain, is that a difference between men and women?
Not so much so.
But even women are, because they say women are more better with the non-logical part.
Yeah. I'd have to. I didn't do any background research on these specific points to talk about it, but yeah, men and women basically have very similar brain functioning. There's a little bit of a difference though. Yep.
Would you say instead of categorizing it as man and woman, what if you categorize it as testosterone and estrogen? The
No,
hormone
not so much.
No,
A little bit, like hormones
Isn't-
will have an effect on how your brain functions,
isn't
but
that the only difference between a man and a woman?
no,
It's like,
there's a lot of physiological
Presence.
difference.
well, like everything stems from, I believe, either more estrogen or more testosterone
Yeah, it does affect like how you perceive things, I guess, to some degree. Like,
after the chromosome.
I'd have to do it. We'd have to look at some studies to see the effects, because they could measure it and then they could check it.
I also thought about, because this is the 1970s, but
80.
So I mean, this year's, there's a lot of newer version. You probably heard about something called MBTI.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on Young's theory.
Mhm.
Basically, 16 types.
Yeah.
Introverts. INTJ, something like
Yeah.
that. So this, not all just on the right, but it's everyone is different, right? Like like somebody is very very good at reading,
Mhm.
but they're not they're very good at metaphysical thinking, but they are not very good at the real like fixing stuff.
Well, there's the introvert, extrovert, and then there's thinking, feeling,
Yeah.
sensing,
yeah,
intuiting.
there's a 4 dimensions.
Yeah, there's-
four
yeah.
characters. So I guess if this is what do you think?
The problem with the Myers-Briggs
Mhm.
is that it's not
Myers-Briggs.
reliable and it's not valid.
Mhm.
So it doesn't actually measure personality. And when people take the same test, they get different results. So the only times that it's used it is very popular. I just did this today. It's used,
You did this today?
we studied it in the class I'm talking about. It's, yeah. And so right now we use the factor model. So it's ocean. And the most valid study is called the MMPI, the
Oh.
Minnesota,
Minnesota something, right? Minnesota.
something personality
Yeah.
inventory.
Yeah,
yeah.
Minnesota. Yeah.
So,
No, what about capacity? For example, some scientific studies, they statute that we use 10-20% of our real
Oh
capacity.
yeah, I heard about it.
yeah,
So-
that was based on the surface area of the brain, not like the full brain. And so it was an inaccurate representation.
Einstein
of-
only used 10. We use 5.
Sometimes you use 0.
We use our whole brain predominantly.
We are happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue here. So 2 ways to tap the right brain. We use the brain dominance theory as a model. The quality of our first creation, what we think in our minds, is significantly impacted by our ability to use our creative right brain. The more we are able to draw upon our right brain capacity, the more fully we'll be able to visualize, synthesize, transcend time, and present circumstances to project a holistic picture of what we want to do and to begin in life. So he's just trying to think, don't be so analytical sometimes, kind of be more present-minded. Okay, so next slide. Proactivity expanded and creating perspective without waiting for circumstances or others. Using imagination, we can visualize to expand our mind, use rich detail involving emotions, feelings, and senses. Put yourself in touch with your values in a larger time scale context. So this is the visualization section, and it's really useful and good, and there is research to back that up. Sometimes we are knocked out of our left brain environment and thought patterns into the right brain by an unplanned experience. So for example, death of a loved one, you get sick, financial problems, other forms of adversity. Maybe look back to our lives and ask ourselves challenging questions. What's important? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? If you're proactive, you don't have to wait for circumstances or other people to create a perspective expanding experience, like a midlife crisis. You can think about it at any time. You can consciously create your own.
Well, what is the midlife crisis? Can you say that?
So when your age gets to a certain point where you realize that you've lost certain opportunities, and so you have to reevaluate what matters to you in life with the time that you have left.
Quarter-life crisis is different too.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe the same. But I heard the idea is actually the midlife thing is actually one sausage from down.
Okay.
I talk about we observe when people reach midlife, suddenly he looked back, he saw that he missed the track, he missed the point. So he kind of redesigned his whole life. That's why crisis means like, oh shit, I mean, I just follow whatever the society let me want me to do, and then and all of a sudden
Mhm.
that's a movie. Some movies about that. What's the there's a man in his mid life, and he kind of what do you call it? He cheated his wife.
Okay.
American something like
American Psycho? No, American Beauty.
American Beauty, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So midlife crisis.
Sure. Yeah.
You're middle class. You have a family. You have kids. You have a car. Suddenly you say, "Oh shit! What I'm doing here? What am my life worth? So that's
Well, that's in line with what I said too. It's not contrary. You're in some ways, I think you're explaining the same thing. Is that like when you're younger, there's many opportunities, but then as time goes by, certain opportunities kind of aren't there anymore. And so you have to reevaluate what's important so that you can still feel good about life, that you're on the right track.
So everyone has a midlife crisis.
Not necessarily. Some people might have it before others.
So it's
Um,
funny post. Yeah, I'd be having a crisis too if my life was mid, as in like.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's
That was
let's
I have a crisis when I was a quarter life.
okay. Let's continue.
They're good for character development.
So expanding perspective. Visualize your 25th and your 50th wedding anniversary, for example. So this is similar to the thing at the beginning of the chapter. Have your partner, you're supposed to visualize this with you. Capture the essence of the family relationship you want to have created by your day-to-day investment over a period of many years. So this is again like your mission statement is supposed to help you get to these kinds of states of your character in the future. You can visualize your retirement. What contributions and achievements do you want to have made in your field? What plans do we have your retirement? Would you enter a second career? Expand your mind. Visualize in rich detail. Evolve as many emotions and feelings as possible. Involve many of the senses as you can. Similar visualization exercise with his university students. He tells them you only have one semester to live. How would you act? And but you have to stay a good student. Visualize how you spend your semester. They put things in a different perspective. Values come to the surface that they didn't recognize. They asked students to live with the expanded perspective for a week and keep a diary of their experiences. The results, they started writing to their parents to tell them how much they loved and appreciated them. They rebuilt relationships that were deteriorated. Their dominant central theme of their activities, the underlying principle was love. The futility of bad-mouthing, bad thinking, put-downs, and accusations becomes very evident when they think in terms of having only short time to live. Principles and values become more evident to everybody. There are a number of techniques to using your imagination that you can put in touch with your values. The net effect of everyone he's seen was the same. When people seriously undertake to identify what really matters most to them in their lives, what they really want to be and do, they become very reverent. They start to think in larger terms than today and tomorrow. So visualization and affirmation, next slide. So personal leadership, ongoing process, keeping vision and values aligned congruently. And so that's why the personal mission statement is a means to help this congruency. Integrate your personal mission statement into your life. Write a program and script in harmony with your values. If done daily, your behavior will change through this visualization. Living scripts written from a self-selected value system. So you want to choose the scripts that you're engaged in. So visualization and affirmation, make sure to visualize the right things to produce what you want. Create an internal comfort zone so when you are in the situation, it is familiar. Affirmation techniques, rescripting and reprogramming purposes and principles into one's heart and mind. Do not submit self to programming that is not congruent with your center. So, okay. Personal leadership is not a singular experience. It doesn't begin and end with the writing of a personal mission statement. It's an ongoing process of keeping your vision and values before you and aligning your life to be congruent with those most important things. In that effort, your powerful right brain capacity can be a great help to you on a daily basis as you work to integrate your personal mission statement into your life. It's another application to begin with the end in mind. So he gives this example of a parent that loves their kids. They identify that as one of their most important values in their mission statement. But every day they have trouble because they're overreacting. So they can use their right brain power of visualization to write an affirmation. Help me become more congruent with my deeper values in my daily life. A good affirmation is, this is Covey, 5 basic ingredients. It's personal, it's positive, it's present tense, it's visual, and it's emotional. So he gives an example of this. It's deeply satisfying, emotional, that I, personal, respond, present tense, with wisdom, love, firmness, and self-control, positive, when my children misbehave. I can then visualize it. I can spend a few minutes each day and totally relax my mind and body. I can think about situations in which my children might misbehave. I can visualize them in rich detail. I can feel the texture of the chair, etc., about the present experience stuff. More clearly and vividly, I can imagine the detail. The more deeply I will experience it, the less I will see it as a spectator. You're more likely to make this happen. Sports people do this, and there's evidence that people that do like knee surgery, for example, if they visualize the therapy, the physiotherapy after the fact and exercising, even though it's super painful, the ones that had more detailed visualizations were more likely to go through the exercises. Question?
No. I'm just trying to, because I did how to say because this is very experienced. I did some visualization in a psychological workshop. It's actually I was helped by other attendants. At that time I was lying on the ground and they put a white cloth covering me, and then the people like really they create a situation like you're really kind of getting buried,
Okay.
about to get buried, and then they throw flowers, and they say something about you, and I was just like that, and you just imagine I'm already dead, and my friends are kind of saying goodbye to me, and yeah, something like that.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. There's something called Death Cafe.
Mhm.
They talk about the similar things, like experience, like trying to experience it.
That's similar to like his visualization of the
Yeah,
funeral. Yes,
visualization,
interesting.
yeah.
All right. So then you can see your child do something very specific that normally makes you upset. Instead of seeing your normal response, you can visualize yourself handling the situation with love, power, and self-control in your affirmation. You can write the program in your mind, write the script in harmony with your values and your personal mission statement. If you do this every day, eventually your behavior will change. Instead of living out the scripts given to us by our own parents, society, genetics, our environment, or our previous habits, we can live out the scripts that we've written from our own self-selected value system. So that's awesome, right?
Very awesome.
So another example, he was encouraging his son with his using affirmation technique with his football career. He taught him how to do it on his own. He would get him into a relaxed state of mind with deep breathing and a progressive muscle relaxation, and then help him visualize how to deal with tough situations on the field. We discovered the nature of the visualization is very important. If you visualize the wrong thing, you'll produce the wrong thing. Gives an example of Dr. Charles Garfield, research on peak performers, both in athletes and in business. He was working with the NASA program, watching the astronauts rehearse everything that they had on Earth, and then in a simulated environment before they went to space. He had his doctorate in mathematics, went back to school to get a PhD in psychology to study the characteristics of peak performers. Almost all the world-class athletes and other peak performers are visualizers. They see it, they feel it, they experience it before they actually do it. They begin with the end in mind. You can do this in every area of your life. See it clearly, vividly, relentlessly, over and over again. Create an internal comfort zone. Then when you get into the situation, it isn't foreign, doesn't scare you. Your creative visual right brain is one of your most important assets, both in creating your personal mission statement and in integrating it into your whole life. So here there's some, there's some problems with subliminal messaging and NLP, neuralistic programming. That stuff is pseudoscience, so we're going to skip that. That's incorrect. Explanation, elaboration, and different packaging of the fundamental principles of the first creation. So there's some problems. He talks about anecdotal evidence versus scientific evidence. This is an invalid argument, and he gives a reference of religious reference, so we're going to skip that. Ineffective personal leadership, visualization, and affirmation techniques emerge naturally out of a foundation of well thought through processes and principles that become a center of a person's life.
Which one was pseudoscience? Sorry to cut you off.
NLP and subliminal messaging.
Neuro-linguistic programming?
Yeah,
Is that
garbage.
NLP?
Yeah, garbage talk.
Okay.
You want to put that one in the toilet and flush it. Extremely powerful and rescripting and reprogramming and writing deeply committed to purposes and principles into one's heart and mind. Central to all enduring religions in society is the same principles and practices, told in different languages. So again, not 100%. We're going to put an X there. Meditation, empathy, and compassion are good though. Use of both conscious and imagination. If these techniques become part of the personality ethic, so this is what you were talking about before, thank you, Dimitri, serve from a base character and principles, they can be misused and abused in serving other centers, primarily like narcissism of the self. Affirmation and visualization are forms of programming. Certain that we do not submit ourselves to any programming that is not in harmony with our basic center or that comes from the sources centered on money-making, self-interest, or anything other than correct principles. So again, there's no principle evaluation mechanism really in this, and so we would have to go somewhere else for that. Imagination can be used to achieve the fleeting success. A person is focused on material gain or what's in it for me. Higher use of imagination is in harmony with the use of conscience to transcend self and create a life of contribution based on the unique purpose and on the principles that govern interdependent reality. Okay, so that's cool. So next slide. Identifying roles and goals, slide 1. So writing helps break holes into parts and provides clarity. So this is like, there's the visualize. So one technique is the visualization. Next one, Natalia, one more. Next one, the first one is visualization, but now he's going to say, well, writing stuff has is important in its own way. Okay, this is a different behavior. There's different roles we have. So all of our roles in life, like being a mother, being a coworker, being a philosophy society buddy, there are different roles, and they are areas or capacities that we have responsibilities. The personal mission statement is balanced if it's broken down into specific roles and goals. So there's professional, personal, and community roles. First, identify roles, then think of long-term goals within each role. Goals reflect deep values, talents, or a sense of a mission. Focus primarily on results rather than activity. Identifies where you want to be and determines where you are. Gives information on how to get there when you arrive. Unifies effort and energy. Gives meaning and purpose to all that you do. So that's what goals are. Next slide, roles and goals. I should have done this differently. There's too much on one slide and not enough on the other. Roles and goals give different structure and organized direction to mission. Identify 2 to 3 results within each area you can accomplish. Short and long-term goals. Okay, so let's look at the book here. 149. The logical verbal left brain becomes important as you attempt to capture your right brain images, feelings, and pictures in the words of a written mission statement. Breathing exercises help integrate body and mind. Writing is a kind of psychoneural muscular activity that helps bridge and integrate the conscious and subconscious minds. I think it's better to say like it makes your thoughts more concrete and explicit, right? And coherent, because you're forced to put it into language instead of just like a thought that can be a little fuzzy. Like when you read it, it has to be very clear, right? And it's more objective than just what you're thinking because it's down on paper or on the laptop. Writing distills, crystallizes, and clarifies thought and helps break the whole into parts. We each have a number of different roles in our lives, different areas or capacities in which we have responsibility. Role as an individual, husband, father, teacher. Each of these roles is important. Major problems that arise when people work to become more effective in life is that they don't think broadly enough. They lose their sense of proportion, balance, and natural ecology necessary to effective living. They may get consumed by work and neglect personal health. In the name of professional success, they may neglect the most precious relationships in their lives, like focusing on work and not being at the Philosophy Society. You may find that your mission statement will be much more balanced, much easier to work with if you break it down into the specific role areas of your life and the goals you want to accomplish in each area. So your professional role, what are you about in that area? What are the values that should guide you? Think of your personal roles, husband, wife, father, mother, neighbor, friend. What are you about in those roles? What's important to you? Think of your community roles. One executive has used the idea of roles and goals to create the following mission statement. My mission is to live with integrity and to make a difference in the lives of others. To fulfill this mission, he talks about charity, you seek out and love the one regardless of their situation, sacrifice, devote their time, talents, and resources to their mission, inspire, teach by example that we're all part of the cosmos and every obstacle can be overcome, impactful, what I do makes a difference in the lives of others. These roles take priority in achieving my mission. So this is a different way to write the mission statement than at the beginning of the chapter. This is like example 3. So what are the different roles that they have? He's a husband, father, son, brother. He's a religious member. He's a neighbor, a change agent, and a scholar. And for each one, he talks about how he can fulfill that role. So as a husband, my partner is the most important person in my life. Together, we will contribute the fruits of harmony, industry, charity, and thrift. So whatever. Change agent. I'm a catalyst for developing high performance in large organizations. So writing your mission in terms of the important roles in your life gives you balance and harmony. It keeps each role clearly before you. You can review your roles frequently to make sure that you don't get totally absorbed by one role to the exclusion of others that are equally or even more important in your life. After you identify your various roles, think about your long-term goals you want to accomplish with each of them. We're into the right brain again. Use imagination, creativity, conscious, and inspiration. If these goals are an extension of the mission statement based on correct principles, they will be vitally different from the goals people normally set. They will be in harmony with correct principles, natural laws. It gives you great power to achieve them. Not someone else's goals, they're yours. Reflect on your deepest values, your unique talent, and your sense of mission. They grow out of your chosen roles in life. An effective goal focuses primarily on the results rather than the activity. So again, that is its own thing. There is process versus outcome orientation, which David Burns talks about, and he would maybe disagree with this. It's important to be mindful that your goals or your expectations are realistic, right? Because we can become upset with ourselves when we don't meet our expectations or our goals because of the way we've constructed them or created them.
What if I look at this road? What if you know, like the some of the road? What if in some situation that you are in conflict with other people's goal? For example, a pro-Trump or anti-Trump. You know, like maybe his mission is you know, I need to support, you know, like this Trump, you know, like just,
Sure.
right? So whatever.
The role as Trump supporter.
Right. The role is you know, and then there's another maybe you know, he will encounter, you know, the conflicts, you know. I'm just saying, you know, this looks, you know, but in a real life, you may encounter situation like maybe this rule may not be able to cover that, you know.
So, for example,
Mhm.
your role as a philosopher
Mhm.
can include people that have roles that are contradictory to your values. So, and then how you fulfill that role would be whenever I am in contact with someone that has unethical political orientation, I will take that as a critical thinking opportunity to help understand and teach them or communicate with them about why the principles that their political orientation is based on do not make sense or are unethical. So, for example, when I talk to people that are like Putin supporters, and then I talk about what's more important, living under a dictator or living in a democracy. And then we talk about the problems of dictatorships and then why democracies are better than that. So they're not mutually exclusive.
So what if the Putin supporter if you try to talk to them, they will throw a punch on you?
Well,
What's your
you'd
point?
also do like be, you know, and then you'd have a different rule, like just social role. Be mindful of people that are aggressive
Mhm.
and don't engage with somebody that's unreasonable or going to be violent. Right. So I guess the principle of don't argue with a fool.
Okay, so you have that principle, don't argue with that fool.
Like be aware that if someone's not of sound mind, you're not going to sit there and reason with them. It's not like, you know, that's unwise.
Okay.
All right. Effective goal focuses on the results rather than the activity. Identifies. Yeah. Okay. So I think we did this one. Did we do this one? I don't know. It identifies where you want to be, and in the process helps you determine where you are. Gives you important information about how to get there. Tells you when you have arrived. So it's a goal is going to be a criteria that you're going to satisfy, right? And that way you know when your efforts have reached its objective or when the efforts are like come to fruition. So it's like necessary and sufficient conditions. It gives you meaning and purpose in all you do, translate itself into daily activities so you can translate your goals into daily activities. This is very fundamental. This leads to the next habit, that you are proactive and you're in charge of your life. You're making it happen each day, the things that will enable you to fulfill your personal mission statement. Roles and goals give you structure and an organized direction to your personal mission. If you don't yet have a personal mission statement, it's a good place to begin. Just identifying the various areas of your life and the 2 or 3 important results you feel you should accomplish in each area to move ahead gives you an overall perspective on your life and a sense of direction. So that's again a reason why a personal mission statement or philosophy is important.
I know it's important, but let me share you my real experience, because I just look at my phone. I actually, it's a little bit different, but that's very similar. I actually practice because I have a time management system.
Mhm.
Like I have a mission statement. I have a like a you know very goal that I need to achieve. Short term, long term, things like that. I read like something like oh, I need to finish reading Kant.
Sure.
Right, and then Heidegger, something like
Sure.
that.
Cool.
And then different categories. Like sports, I need to work on financial management. So actually separate into nine different areas of my life. So, but my I did that according to time management things. At the beginning it's great, but after a while, they also tell you, like in the morning, you should review this, and you should write every day how you achieve, these things, But after a while, I found it boring.
Yeah.
Like so like in the morning, I say, oh, I need to look at that thing again. I rather, because I already in the mood just to do something
Yeah.
very quickly. I don't need to look at that.
It's like trading wheels. It's not
Yeah.
necessary. Like it's just trying to it's a support structure to get you to do a different thing. Doing the thing is what's important.
Right.
And maybe you don't need that thing. Like the personal mission statement, I think creating it initially is a good thing, but you don't need to read it every day necessarily. But if you feel a sense of ambiguity in your life or you're unclear, you can go back to it, and maybe that's the moment of amendment or just to remind you.
But I also found that at the end of the day, you kind of summarize what you did. Also, like sports, what did you do today in sports? You write it, and what lesson did you learn? What achievement did you do this day? I feel that is great. That is good. It just takes time.
Yeah.
It just takes time to you want to be efficient, but writing that, it takes time. It takes the efficient away.
Sure. And I think he would just say that you have to be proactive. You decide to do this, and he's trying to communicate that it helps you in your life in general, is what he's trying to say. And so if we think about the time that we waste, I think that having a personal mission statement, the amount of time that it would take, if it's a few hours, is very low in cost compared to moments where we're bored or we're not doing anything. Because you can even maybe write it on your phone while you're waiting for something.
Yeah, there's also some people even they share it to his friend circle. Like that was actually also very but some people do that, because you the commitment, not just to yourself, you committed to, you tell this to other people, to the outside circle.
Yeah.
So you have to do it.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Something like that.
All right, let's continue. Okay, so moving to habit 3, we get greater depth in the area of short-term goals. Important application at this point is to identify roles and long-term goals as they relate to your personal mission statement. Roles and goals will provide the foundation for effective goal setting and achieving when we get to the habit 3, day-to-day management of life and time. So next slide, family mission statements. Changes core of shared vision and values. Standard criterion for evaluating and continuity, unity, and direction. Input from every family member, showing mutual respect, expression of different views, and working together to create something greater than an individual could do. Framework for thinking and governing. So this is the basic, I guess, somewhat principles of how to create this mission statement for a group and why it's important. So let's see what they have to say here. Okay, so habit 2 is based on the principle, a broad application. Families, service groups, organizations of all kinds can become significantly more effective as they begin with the end in mind. Families are managed on the basis of crisis, moods, quick fixes, and instant gratification, not usually on sound principles. Symptoms surface whenever stress and pressure mount. People become cynical, critical, or silent, or they start yelling and overreacting. Children who observe these kinds of behaviors grow up thinking the only way to solve problems is to fight or flight. The core of any family is what is changeless, what is always going to be there, shared vision and values. By writing a family mission statement, you're giving expression to its true foundation. The mission statement becomes its constitution, the standard criteria for evaluating and decision-making. Gives continuity and unity to the family as well as the direction. When individual values are harmonized with those of the family, members work together for a common purpose. They are deeply felt. Process is as important as the product. The very process of writing and refining a mission statement becomes a key way to improve the family. Working together to create a mission statement builds the production capacity to live it. Production capability capacity. By getting input from every member, drafting a statement, getting feedback, revising it, using wording from different family members, you get the family talking, communicating on things that really matter. The best mission statements are the result of family members coming together in the spirit of mutual respect, expressing their different, working together to create something greater than any one individual could do alone. Periodic review to expand perspective, shift emphasis or direction, amend or give new meaning to the time-worn phrases can keep the family united in common values and purposes. Mission statement becomes a framework for thinking and governing the family. When the problems and crises come, The Constitution is there to remind family members of the things that matter most and to provide direction for problem solving and decision making based on correct principles. So you can put the mission statement up on the wall in the family room so everyone can look at it and monitor themselves daily. It gives some criteria to know how we're doing and the things that matter most. In light of these principles, what are the goals we're working on? What are the action plans to accomplish our goals and actualize our values? Review the statement frequently and rework goals and jobs twice a year. Reflect the situation as it is to improve it, strengthen it, renew it. It renews us, recommends us to what we believe in and what we stand for. So in groups, I think this is important too, because it can help unify people towards a common goal or a structure, right? That's what all countries really have a constitution, right?
Yeah.
So next slide, organizational mission statement. Everyone participates in the involvement. The process is as important as the product is key to its use. So example one, IBM, belief system across the entire organization based on shared values and personal security for all, criterion for decisions affected style of managers and leaders. Every aspect of organization was a mission statement. Effectiveness of a mission statement can created by everyone and not just top executive. Beware of motivational problem, not solved at the same level of thinking that created it. Takes time, patience, involvement, skill, and empathy. So yeah, okay. I may have not finished.
Can I give a comment?
Yes.
Just to make things bigger. Because I mean, it gave me a sense of this book, in a sense of very Americanism.
Well, he's from the States.
Yeah, from the States. And then it's a very, it's a practical, the European tradition, the European, they are more like, how to say, the American, the Europeans sometimes think the American, they lack of the humor or the lack of the romanticism or whatever, they are very practical.
Okay.
Like just do the stuff, James, what's their philosopher? John Dewey, and then James, I don't know. So this thing, it's very how to say, William James, yeah, like a practicalism.
Pragmatism.
Yeah, pragmatism. Yeah.
The truth is what works. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about efficiency. It's about efficiency. It's like a robot,
Production.
productions, like going to the Ford factory, something like that, give you where's the romantic? So it's not romantic,
You can understand if you know a little bit about the history. It's a new country. It was nothing.
See, the Europeans,
Europe have
Culture.
Greeks, Romans, Sumerians, many all this history created a civilization. This we can consider a little bit more not developed, but we don't. We care humanity. Here is it's a new country. We have to develop. We have to rush. We have to go to job. So it's totally new. It's another mindset, totally different.
I'll give you another. The romanticism is actually a trend in philosophy and also in literature. What they try to say is, they deeply argue that this rationalism cannot cover the real truth of the world,
Mhm.
and then the humanism they aim to break all the rules, like a play. They will have this scene, somebody is actually acting, and suddenly he said, "Oh, why I'm here?" And then he asked the audience. The audience kind of like, "Oh, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do the play like this." He said, "Why not?" So it's like a play in a play. It's like that. It's a breaking the fourth wall.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying, this is a very Americanism, and then would that be like? I'm just trying to think about some arguments about this. Would this turn people into a robot? Where's the romanticism? Like I just do things, like based on instinct, like also all those arts, those inspirations, thing,
Well, it's a
What
book
do you-
about
what do you think about
effectiveness,
it?
right? Like
Mhm.
it's a book about leadership in some ways. So that's like the part of the virtue of the book. You're also identifying how that can be a problem. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I'm just trying to.
That's
place the
okay.
argument there.
I'm just saying you could see that virtue as a problem in itself. And so I think that
It's a distraction. Something. This one is focus.
it's the focus. Yeah. It's trying to solve that as a problem.
You know, the literature, the novelists will say, "Oh, I could never, you know, when I write my novel, when I write my play, I will never, you know, say, oh, this is my mission." No, they just
Understand the mission.
the Shakespeare will not have a mission. Say,
Inspiration.
"Oh, I need to be the greatest," you know, whatever. You know, it's like that gut things. You know?
Do you dare to write a novel?
If Van Gogh has this mission statement, he will never paint something. You know, like
Yeah.
you
I
know.
get it.
You know, Picasso said it's a 10% inspiration, no, 10% transpiration, another inspiration.
Mhm.
I don't know.
How
What
do
do you
you say
think?
that?
What do you
I
think?
just, I think it can be
How
very
do you say that?
structured.
Mhm.
10% is inspiration
Mhm.
and 90% is transpiration.
Transpiration. What's transpiration?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
The
Yeah.
romanticism just aim to break all the norms, break all the logics. You know,
Yeah.
they even doing the break for the sake of breaking. You know, it's just, you know.
Yeah, this is a book about like not being immersed in your experience.
Mhm.
It's about being effective,
Mhm.
and it's based on principles, and it is very analytic in that sense. But I think it does have merit and value, and it is good for us to think about.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure.
But I guess there is some degree of like not being overly structured in our lives, you know, and that's one of the problems I've had with the book. But at the same time, I think that this book does help a lot,
Oh yeah, for sure.
you know.
For sure.
So let's continue.
I'm actually more like this. More like
Yeah,
what
me
you
too,
described.
yeah.
It's right over
Okay.
here, you know?
So-
It was actually Thomas Edison.
It's a right citation. Yes.
Restoration, inspiration, and the 10-year rule. I'm gonna take a picture of that. Apparently, Thomas Edison said the same thing.
Okay, organizational mission
Yeah.
statements. Mission statements are also vital to the successful organizations. One of the most important thrusts of my work with organizations is to assist them in developing mission statements. To be effective, statement has to come from within the organization. Everyone should participate in a meaningful way, not just the top strategy planners, but everyone. This kind of doesn't really make sense because once you develop an organization or a mission statement and you hire a new person, you're not going to rewrite it for every new person you hire. So, you know. But I understand what he's trying to say. He's trying to talk about just involvement, and yeah, people are more committed when they involve themselves. Leadership of the organization come into a group and say that IBM stands for three things: dignity of the individual, excellence, and service. So these things represent themselves, the belief system of IBM. Everything else will change, but these things will not change. Belief system has spread throughout the entire organization, providing a tremendous base of shared values and personal security for everyone who works there. He was doing a training group for IBM in New York. There was a small group of 20 people. One of them became sick. He called his wife in California. He needed a special treatment. They ended up like flying the guy home, and he had a personal, they used a helicopter, and they had like a personal physician for him. It just shows that the company stands for him. This guy obviously like made a lot of money at this place and was very valuable. I can't see them doing that for like an introductory minimum wage worker, but whatever.
Sure.
Now, you said, for example, the example in Europe, hire and fire.
Mhm.
For if you want to fight someone in Europe, it's a drama. It's not he has a family, he has debts, but here you want to fight someone. Hey, take your box, bye. It's one example.
Mhm. Okay. So next example, he was scheduled to train 175 people at this shopping center. And he was at a hotel where he was giving a conference, and the level of service was very high and the people weren't supervised. So he arrived late and asked me if room service was available, but the guy at the desk said he would get him a sandwich and stuff like that. So he was really nice. The next day, there was another person. He didn't have markers for when he was teaching these service people. And then some random, dude that worked there just dropped whatever he was doing and helped him out. And then he was watching this one employee was on top of a ladder cleaning something, and the employee saw some woman that was having a problem with a walker. He got down, helped her, and went back up. And he said, I found out how this organization had created a culture where people brought so deeply into the value of customer service. This attitude had impregnated the minds, hearts, and attitudes of every employee there. The back door into the kitchen, he saw the value, uncompromising, personalized service. The manager said, my business is helping organizations develop a powerful team character, a team culture. Amazing what you've done here. The real key, that they had a personal mission statement for this specific hotel. It's in harmony with the statement for the entire chain. And then he said, who developed the statement? Everybody did. Next page. Everyone at every level was involved. The mission statement for that hotel was the hub of a great wheel. Spawned the thoughtful, more specialized mission statements of particular groups of employees. Uses the criterion for every decision that was made. Clarify what those people stood for, how they related to the customer, how they related to each other, affected the style of managers and leaders, affected the compensation system, affected the kind of people they recruited and how they trained and developed them. Every aspect of the organization essentially was a function of the hub of the mission statement. He visited another hotel in the same chain, and the same mission statement was there. Every situation where service was called for, the service was very, very good. Impressed the very most was to see an employee on their own admitting mistakes to their boss. Next paragraph, room service manager phoned to apologize about another issue. So just people were taking initiative and accepting responsibility. The culture of the organization, when the employee admits their own mistake, even though no one else knew about it. Next page, 157. Know a lot of companies with impressive mission statements. The real difference is the effectiveness of a mission statement when it's created by everyone involved in the organization and one written by compared to the one written by a few top executives. Again, it's a little unrealistic because you're not going to change it for every time you fire and hire somebody new or if someone leaves. But I get what he's trying to say.
Everybody gets training when they get hired.
But you're not going to rewrite a mission statement every person that writes and then change it based on that new person that comes into the company,
No,
right?
they just get trained with the company.
Already has. Yeah, for sure. So the fundamental problem in organizations, including families, people are not committed to the determinations of other people for their lives. They simply don't buy into whatever these things are doing. Find people whose goals are totally different from the goals of the enterprise. Reward systems completely out of alignment with the stated value systems. Work with companies that have already developed some kind of a mission statement. How many of the people here know you have a mission statement? What does it contain? How many were involved in its creation? How many really buy into it and use it as the frame of reference for making decisions? Without involvement, there is no commitment. So that's a principle. No involvement, no commitment. In the early stages, a person is new to the organization. When a family is young, they'll buy into the goal. When the people become more mature and their own lives take on a separate meaning, they want involvement, significant involvement. If they don't have that involvement, they don't buy into it. Significant motivational problem that cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that created it. Creating an organizational mission statement takes time, patience, involvement, skill, and empathy. Not a quick fix. It takes time and sincerity, correct principles, courage and integrity to align systems, structure, and management style to the shared vision and values, based on correct principles, and it works. Organizational mission statement, one that truly reflects the deep shared vision and values of everyone within that organization, creates a great unity and tremendous commitment. It creates people's hearts and minds a frame of reference, a set of criteria or guidelines by which they will govern themselves. They don't need someone else directing, controlling, criticizing, or taking cheap shots. They bought into a change of the score of an organization about what the organization is about. Okay, so now we have application suggestions. So record the impressions you had in the funeral visualization and use the chart below. So he has a chart here.
Yeah.
And you can go through that. Number 2, write down your roles as you now see them. Are you satisfied with that mirror image of your life? Number 3, separate yourself from daily activities and begin to work on your personal mission statement. Number 4, collection of notes and quotes and ideas use as resource material in writing your personal mission statement. Identify a project you'll be facing in the near future and apply the principle of mental creation. Results you desire and what steps will lead to those results. Number 6, share the principles of Habit 2 with your family. Suggest that you together begin the process of developing a family or group mission statement. Okay, so now I'm going to read, see if I can get through this in less than 10 minutes. The 20th, so this is new insights on Habit 2 begin with the end in mind. I'm going to try to finish this chapter. 20th Harvard Business School reunion. Clayton Christensen was the keynote address and gave like a speech. His classmates, some of them, didn't talk to their families, were in prison. Others were living unhappy lives. None of them started thinking, I want to have a crappy life. They didn't carefully think through what matters most because they repeatedly made small compromising decisions over their life and found themselves in a completely different place than they intended to be. He told a story about his first job out of school at a very high-class consulting firm. When he first worked there, he was working long and hard hours. Juggling work and life demands became challenging. Managers told him to clear his Sunday so the team could prepare for an important meeting. He paused and told his manager, I can't work. Then his manager walked away and came back. He's like, what about Saturday? Prepare for the meeting then. He's like, I'm sorry, I prioritize Saturdays with my family. And then the manager got pissed. And he's like, well, do you work on Friday? And then he got through, and he worked on Friday. So he got through the decision, and for the first of many that shaped his life for the better, propelled his career and kept him near to his family and other things that mattered to him. If he were to compromise staying late or working the weekends just this once, it would become a slippery slope. It's easier to stick to your principles 100% of the time than 98% of the time. Decide what you stand for and stand for it all the time. In his speech, he got a standing ovation. No one sat down. They kept on clapping. He was challenging the type A personalities, thinking deeper than they had before, but what truly defines success, and to begin with the end in mind. So do you want to be in a situation where you were a loving parent, or do you want to have spent your life being at work and not being with your family? Don't climb the ladder of success, and upon reaching the top rung, realize that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. The power of a purpose and mission. His grandfather tended sheep and was trapped in a winter in this plain in Wyoming. It was minus 30 degrees. He thought he was going to die. He made it through the night and promised to the cosmos that he would make a hotel right there where he survived. And then he ended up building a hotel there. His father went to business school. He had a passion for teaching and decided he didn't want to run the hotel that his grandfather built. He was afraid to tell his father, but then he got the courage and he said, I don't want to run the family business. His grandfather said, I never actually liked the business myself anyways. He said, go ahead and be a teacher. So his dad was mission driven. He wrote a mission statement, the idea of unlocking human potential and flooding the world with principle-centered leadership. Saw himself as a pathfinder, trailblazer, paradigm breaker. The role he envisioned. Yeah, you don't have this part in your book. It's new.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Okay.
It's in the 30th anniversary edition, so make sure you guys get this copy.
Was this whole chapter or like just a few?
This
paragraphs?
last section is only in this book.
Okay.
Felt that everyone-
These sessions are new.
Yeah. He felt everyone had a distinct mission or unique contribution to make, always committing this to people. He defined leadership. Leadership is communicating to another their worth and potential so clearly that they're inspired to see it in themselves. How to write a mission statement. So leadership requires empathy and being able to develop a person and their own capacities and skills that they already have. The best way to begin with the end in mind, write a personal mission statement, philosophy, or creed. You can't afford not to do it. Something incredibly powerful about writing a mission statement, a personal constitution. Guide your life and direct your daily decisions. Getting it done and not overthinking it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get started and refine it over time. So here's some ideas for starting. Free write. Sit down, write for 15 minutes, keep your pen moving, write everything that comes to mind, what you're best at, self-awareness, what you need to do, conscience, what you would do if you had no limits, imagination. Key is to continue writing until the time is up. When you're done editing the rough draft, you can fix it later. Next page, plan a retreat. Schedule a day when you can get away to some location that inspires you, the beach, a mountain, or a park. Think about what matters to you most. Ask yourself questions like the ones below and write down the answers. Synthesize and edit until you have a draft. Think of a person who has made a positive difference in your life. What qualities does that person have that you would like to develop? Describe a time when you were deeply inspired. Who would you or what would you be willing to cross the Grand Canyon for? If you could spend one day in a great library studying anything, what would you study? What are 10 things you absolutely positively love to do? Think of something that represents you. How does it uniquely represent you? Branch out. Use your favorite quote, single word or piece of music or poem. Use a vision board, a visual way of capturing your mission. Use a template. On their website, they have a template of how to build a mission statement. So Sean Covey first wrote his mission statement, progressively became shorter down to one sentence. Clarifying what your life is through a mission statement can dramatically impact your life. For example, Elizabeth Marks was serving as a military and enlisted, but then she got a serious injury when she was in Iraq. She was scared of medical discharge. Her mission statement was fit for duty, she became a record-breaking paraswimmer. His dad called a family meeting. They were going to write their family mission statement. The idea to create our own family constitution. He wants everyone's input. We did meet several times to refine the mission statement, and then it said something like, our home was a place of fun, relaxation, learning, friends, growth, and order, to develop ourselves into the kinds of people who can contribute to the world. The process of writing and posting the family mission statement made me feel like a vital part of the family. We did have a purpose. We were about something. We had lots of problems and fights like every family, but it helped us create a resilient and fun family culture. We enjoyed being together where everyone was willing to apologize and try again. The Massive constitution hanging on his wall, 2,000 words. Someone had a 3-word mission statement. Someone had a single word mission statement. 164. No organizational mission statements, not just words on a wall. Organizational mission statements sometimes get a lot of flack. Platitudes, nobody lives. You're created by a couple of people at corporate and pushed down the throats of everyone in the organization that don't buy into it. You can't underestimate the power of creating a mission statement as a team and getting it right. Some organizational mission statements are so genuine you can feel their mission exuding from their people, products, and services. He gives an example of IKEA and American Girl. Implementing an organizational mission statement. There was an example of a magnet school that was struggling in the United States in 2000. Attendance was low. The school could accommodate 800 students, but only had 300. The building was messy. Parents were not involved, and teachers didn't enjoy working there. The superintendent was going to shut the school down. Then the manager of the school, the principal, said, "Why don't we go out and talk with the community to find out what they want the school to teach their kids? We want our children to be self-starters, to get along with other people, to learn how to set goals, solve problems, balance their lives, show up on time, resolve conflicts, and play at the park. Leadership skills." Leadership was what their school needed most. Superintendent liked it. The new mission statement was posted in the center of the school. Our mission is to develop leaders one child at a time. Help them become leaders of their own lives in their school. The teachers began integrating the 7 habits into their existing lessons. There was a significant rise in student self-confidence and a drop in discipline problems. Behavior of their children began to change at home. Inspiring quotes about leadership were posted in the hallways. School events took on leadership theme. Student carried out a data notebook where they kept track of their test scores, set and tracked their goals, leadership role to play in the school. Everyone was a leader in some kind of leadership. Every single student. Last page. Academic scores rose. Enrollment increased from 300 to 800. Housing prices in the school zone rose. Then named the #1 magnet school in the U.S. Today, more than 5,000 schools in over 50 countries have adopted the A.B. Collins leadership model called Leader in Me. 2 million students and their families. The end in mind was with a school mission statement to match. Whatever works for you, a personal mission statement represents the highest and best within you. Do what you can to write a mission statement or refine the one you already have. Bam. Yeah, chapter's done.
That was like, poop, 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 poop. That was like connecting the dots, like on your way down.
I literally read the last of this chapter just before I had a shower and came here. So yeah, it is 10,
Yeah,
so we're
we did it.
technically done, but we finished this chapter today.
Yeah.
So next week, we can actually do a movie night soon.
A movie night.
There's a whole curriculum part of the philosophy study that there's a bunch of movies to watch.
Ooh.
So are you guys going to be here next week?
I'm gonna be here next week and the next week, and then I'm going
You're gone. Where are you going?
Relabel student.
Halifax to see my grandchild born.
That's pretty cool.
And then
Congratulations.
Turkey. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Should we watch a movie soon or should we just continue with this
Yeah,
book?
let's do it next week or next week.
Okay.
What movie?
Well, we should probably do The Peaceful Warrior.
Jesus Warriors.
Peaceful Warrior.
Yes, I want to finish that one.
Okay. We can do The Peaceful Warrior next week.
Watch it.
Where? Here?
Let's do something else. But the other one.
Let's do something else.
Life is beautiful. No. There was another one we supposed to watch it. but We
Gattaca?
never did. Gattaca.
Or yeah, Gattaca.
Gattaca.
What's that?
Let's do that.
We can do that. Okay. I guess we can watch the other ones when you're gone.
Tom Cruise.
Okay. Sorry.
Tom Cruise. I mean,
Oh, Vanilla Sky.
the
That's on the list. Good call.
Okay, cool.
And being there. Okay. Well, so begin with the end in mind. The reason this is important is because it solidifies what you're doing with your life and it helps you know what your values are and then act and behave in a way that represents those values. So it's a character improving skill. And so everything you do, you're supposed to begin with the end in mind. And that's a habit that you develop. I need to drink water and listen to my voice. So I haven't talked for 3 hours for a long time. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Damn.
Next time I'll bring you a bottle of water.
Thanks. So yeah, so that's good for today. And then are we doing a movie next week?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do Gattaca next week. Is that what you want to do?
Bring snacks.
You can bring snacks.
So we watch it here?
We're going to watch it here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do
All
it
right.
here?
All right, everybody. We will see you again. So the video for next week will be different. I'm just going to do it at the end for discussion time. So we're going to watch the movie and then that won't be on the video because there's problem. You can't do that on YouTube. But then after we'll watch it, thing. So we can just use my YouTube account on your thing to watch the video. 'Cause all the videos are on my YouTube account. All right, everybody.